fashion, things to wear, possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rock and Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies. We got some shirts. We got some tanks coming up. We got some booty shorts. We got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rock and Horror.
Horns up. Fangs out. All right there, Fangs and Infernos, and all of our beloved RIPs. Devil and I have a question to pose for you guys, mixed with a dilemma that we came across. Now, of course, all of you beloved Fangs and Infernos know that the devil, unlike all the others, epically loves his sin and skin. So also, to a certain degree, welcome to your X alphabets of horror. Now, that being said, what type of X do you guys like? And what floats your boat or potentially sinks it? So anyway, there, Fangs and Infernos, that being said, Devil came up with the idea of, in being that there's just not a lot of X-rated movies, like letter X starting movies, that we could really do for you guys to vote on. You know, of course, we give you about 5 decades worth of a movie to choose from, and you guys pick it. The fact of the matter is we've already covered X, and the only other real movie would be like Extra. Not that that wouldn't be a fun, hilarious conversation. So Devil posed the proposition of doing X-rated movies. So that's the way we decided to go, was with a movie there, my friend, that features either somebody in the adult industry or used to be in the adult industry. And now, while one of the movies is a definite absolutely, not that the other one isn't, it's a little bit more of an intriguing, risque story. So what do you say, my friend? Zombie strippers? Shock 'em dead.
Yeah, like I said, we were thinking about what we wanted to do as far as the X. So we're like, you know what, we'll do X rated. And who else are we gonna talk about other than, the good old Tracy Lords and Jenna Jameson, two, iconic, ex, porn stars, ex adult entertainers that, went through that route and started going into the, industry and kind of made their break for that and started doing but more. Even though I would say, when it comes to that category, not saying I don't love my Jenna Jameson, you know what I mean? She's been in a bunch of movies, but definitely Tracy Lords kind of took that pillage and did a little bit more, of herself. She's actually done, a lot more films and became like more of a film star, versus like Jenna and stuff like that. But like I said, there's a lot of good movies. I mean, like I said, with Jenna, there's little movies here and there, but I kind of wanted to do one. That's why we did Zombie Strippers. I kind of wanted to do one where she has a main role or
Yeah.
is like a predominant role, which a lot of the other regular movies, she kind of just had like a small little role. And then with Tracy Lords, there's so many good ones. I mean, there's horror related ones. I mean, all the stuff she did with John Waters and stuff like
Oh,
that too. Obviously everybody knows her from The Blade, which you would think that which would have probably been the route that Vampire would have went, knowing that it's a vampire movie. But he's been on the Shock 'em Dead kind of role
love
for a
this
little
movie.
while. He'd been wanting to talk about that since we did our M3 one when we did Trick or Treat instead. So why not throw that in? It's been a long time since I've seen Zombie Strippers. I've seen a lot more recently. It's been a long time since I've seen Shock 'em Dead. And it definitely shocks you dead. I mean, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Absolutely, for sure, there, my friend. Because the fact of the matter is, like, look, reality is just reality. Neither one of these movies are going to score exceptionally high. But as far as enjoyment and love of these movies are awesome. I don't care what anybody says. I will fight to the death. I will die on the hill. These movies are awesome. And anybody that says otherwise is simply not paying attention. But at the same time, we are realists, and that's what it comes down to. But also, yeah, because I've been dying to talk about this movie. And the funny thing is, we have another potential category coming up in a little bit where I probably would have put this movie into that consideration had it not worked out for this situation. But also, um, when it comes to that Shock 'em Dead, I'm also very partial to this movie as well because my absolute favorite guitar player of all time did the basically the stunt work, but the musicians, he was the musical stunt man of the main character for this movie, in Michelangelo Badio, who's my absolutely favorite guitar player of all time. So I love the fact that I get to tie that in as well. But absolutely, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it because let's have a little bit of fun to start off there, my friend. Let's kick it off with yourself. Let's go with the high-ranking porn star in Jenna Jameson. Of course, a really kind of cool comparison and matchup because you've got Jenna Jameson, you've got Robert Englund. And let's talk about zombie strippers actually to start this one off. Again, this movie is a lot of fun. I've seen this movie a bunch and I enjoy it every time I watch it. If you watch this movie and you just don't enjoy it, you're just too delicate. It's so absurd. It's so ridiculous. And it's, yes, okay, as a movie itself, so much ridiculousness, so much stuff that makes no sense, and definitely stuff that's not exactly the greatest either. But the concept of this movie is so epic. The fact that you've got this like main military base and a strip club just happens to be right next door. I mean, that premise alone is ridiculous in every aspect, but still makes for a good time. But Devil, your movie, man, take it away.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, to begin with, what's not to love about this movie? It's called Zombie Strippers. Who doesn't love zombies? Who doesn't love strippers? Who doesn't love Jenna Jameson? Who doesn't love Robert Englund? Who doesn't like titties throughout the whole entire movie? I mean, right there, like you said, if you don't like this movie, I don't know, man. It's one of those ones like we always talk about. There's that fine line between shit movies and
Yeah.
shit movies. And like we
Yes.
said, we talked before, when we talk about Thanksgiving and the trauma movies and all that kind of stuff, they're fun movies that are shit movies. We
Yes.
love them. We know that they're shit movies, but that's the point of
Totally.
it. It's the same thing with like Coon we've talked about and all that kind of stuff. We love that silly
Yeah.
stupidness of it. Now, granted, like I said, I mean, there are going to be things that people like about this movie and things that don't like about it. The thing that I think gets really, really cool is that when watching this movie, it's like, obviously when watching it for the last, couple of years, it wouldn't have played anything. But I think it's cool watching it now because you have like the goody goody two kind of girl, and people will see her now, and she's the main role in Peacemaker. She's freaking
Yes.
Peacemaker's like got girl that she's always going after. I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy to see her like so young in this movie, and I just love the
So young.
concept. Yeah, I love the concept of this movie just in general. I always had an idea that, if I ever, made it big in a band or made it big somewhere and just had like or won a lottery or got a lot of money, I always wanted to make a strip club that was a strip club for more of the horror fan base. And I wanted to make a more than likely a zombie strip club where when you come in, all the girls are full on gore, horror makeup, zombie like makeup, blood and cages and all that kind of stuff. And I always thought that would be kind of a cool idea. And I can remember when this movie came out, I'm like, damn it, now everybody's gonna want to do this. Which surprisingly, there still is no market for zombie strippers. So I still have that hope and dream that if I get a lot of money, I want to do it because I always thought that'd be cool. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
a strip club, for, like I said, for that alternative and that horror and stuff like that. I mean, you could do other nights where it's this kind of creature or that kind of creature. You could have like a straight up just a vampire night or something like that. I always just thought that would be kind of cool. You know what I mean? Just from movies like this, seeing ideas of like From Dusk Till Dawn, with all that kind of stuff, like when they're doing it, I always thought that would be kind of cool because you know what I mean, like the alternatives necessarily don't always have like the a place to go. I'm not saying that there aren't goth strip clubs or just regular strip clubs that do have women there that are goth and goth type and stuff like that. But I always thought it would be kind
Yeah.
of cool to have more of that blood and guts and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like going into this movie, I'm like, what? It's just so freaking crazy. It's so stupid. It's just like you said. I mean, I love the fact that like it is like the Air Force base. The base is by that. You do have this strip club. I love the fact that the strip club is like not really advertised. It's like underground in a freaking shady ass like building and all this crazy shit. But then all the people are there and everybody's throwing their money on there, and the one guy's just like tossing all his money. I'm like, man, that guy's gonna lose all his money in the first second. You know what I mean? I love it and stuff like that. And then what's not to add? Whenever you get into the zombie parts of it, it just gets great. I love the fact that as they progress later on in the movie, they kind of get more disgusting and body parts falling off and they get more deteriorated. And then all of a sudden, the young zombies like, ooh, I'm young and fresh now because I just turned into a zombie. So now you're having zombie on zombie stripper fights and stuff like that. So it's such an obscure, crazy, weird movie. And then, like I said, then you just have like the king of sleaze and the king of playing roles like this with Robert England just playing this I don't give a fuck kind of guy that just runs this strip club. And it's just I love like these kind of characters. It reminds me of like all like these kind of characters that he did, like when he did he had that strip club in that in the Masters of the Horror one when we've talked
Yep.
about it and stuff like that, or even just like his character in Strangeland, or just these characters that he's done. I mean, obviously everybody knows him as Freddy Krueger and all that, but yeah, I love the fact that he's just this asshole that just doesn't give a shit. And he's just like, go out there and do it. What are you doing? I don't give a shit. Just go out there and strip and making money.
2001 Maniacs. He was
Yeah,
that same
yeah.
kind of way.
Yep.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Devil, for sure. And I love the fact that you brought up like the zombies, the deterioration and things like that. Because the thing about it, I really got to give a shout out to this. Like the practical effects, the special effects makeup. Like there's CGI in this movie. There's a lot of it, and some of it's all right, a lot of it not so much. The practical effects, like the zombie makeup for this, personally, I thought it was pretty top notch. It's really good. Like watching the deterioration of the zombies and just from a makeup point of view and the whatever they use, whether it be the makeup, the latex, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty top notch. Like it's really good. And there's a lot of zombie movies, a lot of movies of this type that go different directions to show deterioration, and it's just not good. For the amount of stuff that we can bash on this movie, this isn't one of them. I always thought that this was really, really cool. But no, I mean the movie's like so fun. I mean, you practically open up the movie to just Jenna Jameson in her glory, just all up in your face. And she gets turned like instantaneously and is basically becoming like not only like, top bitch just because she is Jenna Jameson, but also because she's like just kind of running shit. And then the girls are turning and they're deteriorating. But again, it's this combination of like, military trying to take it down, but these guys are just epically awful at what they do. And that's the thing that's kind of crazy too, Devil, is like when it comes to military in real life, you don't fuck with those dudes. They are the best of the best, the most elite. Like could kill you practically by looking at you. Like military training is like no joke. But these dudes are just epically awful at what they do.
Yeah, I mean that's where like the comical side of it comes like that's really really cheesy and really awful too. It's just like I love the fact that it's like yeah, you're talking about, all these badass military groups, and these guys are like supposedly like are the best, the elite of the elite, the toughest. They've gone and done all these different wars and different things, and they're just badass, and you're expecting like okay, maybe you're looking at like, the military group from like Aliens 2, or
Oh yeah.
you're looking at like the military group from like Stargate or something like that. No, you're getting like Barney Fife type fucking military people. It's just so horrible and stuff like that. It's just so freaking stupid. And that's the other thing. I mean, the only other thing that I remember about this movie that I read about, which was kind of sad when I read about it, was kind of down points it, but the fact that you have the gothy girl, the stripper
Yeah.
that comes out, and all of a sudden, she comes out and shows her titties and she's pierced, and everyone's like, ooh. Supposedly that was all prosthetic. She did not have pierced titties. I'm like, come on, man. You couldn't have found a chick with real pierced titties, or pierced your titties just for the movie or something like that. You could have just taken them out afterwards. Come on, be a trooper. But I mean, but yeah,
Seriously.
what's
Mrs.
what's
Vamp would have done that shit.
yeah, I'm like, what's not to love about this? Like I said, I mean, you got that, she's doing it. You got like I said, the new girl that's kind of like this religious, coming from a, like a small bone dunk town and stuff like that, and she, doesn't want to do it, and then she's kind of scared and getting nervous, and then, like I said, I mean, it's just, it's Jenna Jameson in her glory, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I just love it. I just love the fact that, but yeah, it's just kooky and craziness. I mean, even to the point where like it gets absurdly stupid, but in a good way, that like these guys, it's not even like, okay, when you have that first time that Jenna turns into a zombie and kills somebody and some crazy shit going on, you're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be ruined. No. The guys who are coming to the strip club are coming strictly just for the zombie girls. And they don't
Right.
like when the other girl comes out, they're like boo, or like walk away, and nobody wants it. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, bring back what's her name, and then she comes back as a zombie, and everyone's like, yeah, and throwing money and stuff like that. I'm like, it's so crazy, it's so absurdly stupid, like that you're more excited about watching this like deteriorating zombie, do all this crazy stuff, and knowing the fact that, it's probably going to kill you, because all of a sudden, your buddy's missing, and now two buddies are missing, and now three buddies are missing, and nobody tends to care. They're just like, whatever, I'm just gonna go and throw this money on the strip club and give all the money and stuff like that. So I just thought that was kind of funny. It's just like, even when they're taking them back into the private room to do a private dance, they're just like, yeah, they're just like
Champagne room.
the champagne room. Apparently there may be no sex in the champagne room, but there's eating in the champagne room, and they're gonna eat you.
They got a full-on buffet.
Yeah, and then what else you add to the strip club that has all this crazy stuff? It's got some kind of prison jail cell in this place too, where they hide all the reanimated zombies are all of a sudden just in this jail cell. And I'm like, man, this is like the coolest freaking like just strip club in general. Like, you got to go down this weird shady thing, go into it, got to go in through this door, then you got that, and then you got that, and you got this, and you got that. I'm like, man, this is like the perfect freaking interior for a freaking strip club.
Right. And there's also little bits of absurdity. One is an amazing scene that makes the movie. I don't care who you are. But the other thing I want to point out that I just think is hilarious, and again, it's just a sign of the times. And if you grew up as a fan or if you grew up familiar with it, it just kind of is what it is. But another cameo in this movie, because this movie is actually, it's 15 years old now, a little more. And the bouncer in this strip club is Tito Ortiz, who at the time is one of the bigger bosses, like rock stars of the UFC. But when shit starts getting real, he like runs off like a bitch. which I always thought was like hilarious because like he's done a bunch of movies. Like he's been in, oh God, he's been in The Crow, Wicked
Yeah,
Prayer, for the record. I don't want anybody to misconstrue my reaction because everybody knows how much I love The Crow. But yeah, when it comes to Wicked Prayer, oh God damn it, you bastards.
yeah,
But not, for the record though, Devil and I have had the pleasure to meet a couple of people who were in the Wicked Prayer, and they were very cordial to us. They signed my poster. Super cool. I'm never going to pretend that that movie is anything other than subpar. But as far as the way that they treated me and Devil, absolutely no complaints whatsoever. But anyway, he's done all kinds of other movies, like Cradle to the Grave, where he plays himself, basically. He plays like a cage fighting badass and stuff like that. But he just kind of runs off like a fucking pussy, and it's really funny. And I always thought that was kind of hilarious. One, for the sake that the bouncer is just running off, but also because I was like, I still like the UFC, I still like cage fighting. I'm not as familiar nowadays. Like, no disrespect to like the UFC, but what they started churning out so many events like so quickly that it was really hard for me to keep up. And now I'm just kind of where I used to be like an Epic fan and I knew all the fighters like all the time. Now I'm just kind of a guy. I enjoy it. It's awesome. I'll watch it when I can, but I couldn't tell you who any of the champions are. Now, if we're going to talk pro wrestling, that's a whole completely different story because me and Mrs. Vamp are way into that. Devil, you're a fan as well. So there's definitely that kind of stuff. But also, we got to talk about one of the more memorable fight scenes. I guess you would call it a fight scene in this movie. But Devil, do you fancy yourself a game of pool?
yeah. Yeah, it's funny going into before we get to the full fight. Yeah, the Tito
Right.
thing, I think it's just funny. The fact that the reason why people are like, "Oh my God, why is Tito Ortiz?" and like you said, doing all that, is that he was dating Jenna Jameson at the time he was making
Yes.
this movie, so that's probably why he like, "Hey, you're dating Tito, right? Yeah, yeah. He's a big motherfucker. We have a part for me and a bouncer, but he's a big pussy."
Right.
Tito's probably like, "Fuck yeah, man! This is kind of funny because you know what I mean. Like you would think, like I said, not even just knowing that it's Tito Ortiz who is gonna
Yeah.
fuck almost 99.9% of people up. The fact that even if he would just been a normal guy, just that bouncer, big dude, and all of a sudden he's just like first sign of trouble, he's like, running like a little pansy or something like that. I always thought that was funny. But yeah, yeah. Let's talk about billiards and
Yeah. So
pool.
yeah, so we've got Jenna Jameson. Here's the funny thing, and I have to address it this way because it wouldn't, it wouldn't, it's not going to make sense regardless. But it's a little less funny if I don't acknowledge this. We're about to get into a movie starring Tracy Lords. Devil, you and I are both big Kevin Smith fans. We love our Kevin Smith. It's I I gotta acknowledge the fact that if anybody's familiar with Kevin Smith movies, Tracy has been in one of them called Zack and Miri Make a Porno, ironically, but very apropos for this conversation, with a character named Bubbles, who has a unique ability to blow bubbles with an appendage, I guess. Now, that being said, the most kind of epic fight scene of this movie is Jenna Jameson's ability to shoot fucking billiard balls out of her coochie, and then one of them gets baseball smacked right back into her, only for her to shoot it back out at 10 times the force for the victory. I
Yeah.
mean, come on, bro. What the fuck? Because that's epic enough. And again, the character's name is Bubbles. Fangs and Infernos, you can figure it out for yourself. But for the record, if you haven't watched Zack and Mary Make a Porno, it's fucking awesome. It's hilarious. We love it to death. Please go watch that movie. Katie Morgan's in that movie if you like your sin and skin. Um, definitely go check it out because it's fucking hilarious. And Tracy is just awesome and we love her. And Devil and I are looking forward to getting to meet her at a con that we're planning later this year as of the recording of this episode. So, Tracy, we appreciate you. But anyway, back on point. I mean, dude, like, it's one thing to shoot him out. It's another thing to have it knocked back into you, and it's a whole nother level to shoot it right back out at epic force.
Yeah, I mean, they've always, you always heard about the girl that can, who can shoot ping pong balls out of her cooch, but never heavy ass billiard balls that are pretty heavy. I mean, and that means Jenna's really worked on her kegels really good. She's been kegling it for a while, and then as a zombie has the super strength. I mean, I was waiting for that to just become like a machine gun or something at one point where she's just like pop, 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 pop.
Yes.
That'd have been great. But yeah, it's just like it's so absurd, it's so stupid. It's just like you're like, what? You know what I mean? It's just adding one extra thing of just stupidness when it comes to this movie. But like I said, it just this movie, like I said, it's fun. It's meant to be stupid. It's meant to just you're not supposed to take this movie seriously. It's called Zombie Strippers. It's got freaking Jenna Jameson in it and Robert Englund and shit in it. It's not meant to be, like I said, it's not breaking, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. It's just meant to be stupid entertaining. And like I said, that's the good thing about it. Like I said, when we talk about these kind of movies, like it fits in the wheelhouse of the stuff that we like. We love the Kevin Smith movies, the trauma movies. We love the full moon movies and stuff like that. So we're all about like that, stupidness and quirkiness and oddness and weirdness stuff. And so, like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? Even within the trauma movies. I mean, there are trauma movies that I find completely horrible to an extent where it's horrible, not good, horrible, bad. Same thing with
Yeah.
Full Moon. There's some Full Moon movies I just think missed the ball, and like that's the thing when you do these kind of movies. It's not going to be everybody's one. I mean, I know some people, we've talked about it with Subspecies, or even when we talked about it with Puppet Master. Some people,
Yeah.
are going to look at Puppet Master and be like, I just don't like Puppet Master. And it's like, same thing with me. I mean, I know a big one that everybody talks about is Killjoy. I don't mind Killjoy, but I'm not as big as a Killjoy fan as as Vampire is and stuff like that. But there are other ones that I've huge. And then, like I said, you got those other kind of ones that you're really into. We've talked about it, like
Yeah.
Ginger Dead Man and Evil Bong. I mean, Evil Bong I take for a grain of salt just because it's meant to be stupid. I don't mind it as
I mean,
much.
I'm with you on that one, Devil, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely am.
But I mean, but there have been, like I said, with that. So that's what I love about these kind of movies, especially when it comes to like these kind of movies that are just absurd and stupid. That you can just say, okay, that was dumb, but I enjoyed it. Or you can just say, like, some people might say, it's dumb, and I didn't enjoy. You know what I mean? So it's each to own. I know we shit on Rotten Tail, but I'm pretty sure there's probably somebody out there that thinks Rotten Tail is the greatest movie ever made. And yeah, I mean, you're wrong, but that's beside the point. And you're allowed to be wrong, and you can still voice your opinion, but you're wrong anyway. But that's beside the point.
But for the record, if we have a Fang or Inferno out there that really does love Rotten Tail, we do want to hear from you. Please message us. Like Devil and I would really love to touch base with you on why you see the movie the way you see it. Because he and I watched that movie from the comfort of our couch together and looked at each other like, what the fuck? And it's all good. This is a judgment-free zone. We love each and every one of you. But if there is a Fang or an Inferno out there that genuinely loves Rotten Tail, please message us. We really do want to hear from you.
Yeah, apparently somebody does because we talked about Rotten Tail. It's been kind of a theme in this, and I'm just gonna go out and say this right now. I'm not saying that they're watching us or listening to us or whatever like that, because obviously they record their stuff way in advance before it gets on televised uh, television. But Joe Bob did Rotten Tail, and we did Rotten Tail, and there's been a couple movies that we've talked about that are obscured horror films. Like obviously we're gonna talk about some movies that are gonna be, but I thought it was really funny that we did Rotten Tail, and then go and behold, like when it got close to them doing theirs, I'm like, oh shit, Joe Bob's doing Rotten Tail too, and like obviously they didn't shit on it nearly as much as we did.
Oh
So
man, we were
I'd like
so
to.
mean.
So I just think it's kind of funny, but that's the good thing about like with this where it's like hey man, like I said, if Rotten Tail is your jam, it's cool. If Zombie Strippers is your jam or isn't your jam, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's all good. Like I said, I mean, we love some stupid movies that a lot of people are saying horrible. I know out there right now on IMDb, one of the worst. It used to be one of the worst rated movies, but now it's not, and people hate on it. And if it didn't bomb, we wouldn't have had not Pixar's, but the Iomation animation, like with all the Despicable Me's. But you wouldn't have Despicable Me if Howard the Duck didn't flop nearly as bad as he did, and he had a sell. And I'm a huge Howard the Duck fan. I think
Oh
that
yeah,
movie's great. Same thing we've talked about with Stephen King. Stephen King hates Maximum Overdrive. I think Maximum
dude,
Overdrive is a badass movie. I don't care what
badass.
anybody says. Now,
Oh,
granted, yes, I think it could have been a lot more gorier, and there's people who talked about it being gorier and stuff like that for ones. But yeah, I love that movie. So that's what we were talking about when we were talking about this stuff. It's like, yeah, just because we shit on a movie doesn't necessarily. I mean, like I said, there are going to be some movies that there's no what you say is going to convince me, and the same way with other way around. It's like there's no way that me or Vampire are going to convince you that this movie is great or that movie is great. I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm all about like, hey man, check it out. Form your own opinion. Don't listen to what other people are saying and stuff like that. Prime example before we get back into it was go see people at Conjuring. Everybody talks shit
yep.
on that new Conjuring movie. I actually didn't think it was that bad. So I mean, it's one of those ones like if I were to listen to every critic talking about it, I'd have been like, okay, I'm gonna stay away from it. But that's the thing about these movies is like you gotta form your own opinion. You know what you like. Obviously, if you're not into campy zombie movies that have ex porn stars in it that have a lot of tits and they're gonna be mindlessly stupid movies to watch. If that's not your jam, obviously you're not gonna watch it. But if you have like an inkling of the of some kind of interest in that kind of stuff, yeah, definitely go and check out Zombie Strippers because it's fun, it's stupid, and like I said, it's got Jenna Jameson in it. I mean, and titties, lots of titties.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And it's just like what Devil was saying. Like, yeah, when it comes to that kind of stuff, like, look, I'm an epic Toxic Avenger fan when it comes to trauma. I'm a huge Class of Nukem High fan when it comes to Full Moon. Like, subspecies, Ginger Dead Man, Killjoy. That's my little triangle. Like, that is my world. Like, Devil, not so much when it comes to Killjoy, and that's all good. And there's so much like, you know, full moon stuff that is great and definitely very bizarre. Like Mrs. Vamp, to her credit, love her to death. That's my muse. But like she rolls her eyes when I'm like, she's like, babe, what are you watching? I'm like, oh, I'm watching Killer Eye, or I'm watching Quadrant, or I'm watching Head of the Family. And she's like, oh, you're on your full moon kick again, aren't you? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. But anyway, bringing it back in. When it comes to zombie strippers, look, here's the bottom line when it comes to there. Devil and I are doing a category based on ex porn stars in fun movies. We're not going to pretend to cater to anybody because the fact of the matter is that doesn't do you guys any justice and that doesn't do anything for us either. Look, we're straight up about the way that we love movies. Both of these movies, I love them. I think they're great. I've watched them a bunch. I'm going to keep watching them, but I'm not going to score them high. Devil and I are about to get into that right now. They don't deserve that because it's unrealistic to you guys. That doesn't mean that they're not epically, it doesn't, not even epically, it doesn't mean that we don't enjoy them on a high basis. Like when I get into the next movie, I'm not even gonna lie. If it was up to me and my heart, that movie's gonna score ridiculously high. In reality, that will absolutely not be the case. Devil, my friend, zombie strippers, man. How do you look at this movie? I mean, it's fun, it's great, it's a good time. I love the practical effects. The special effects are subpar. I don't think they translate very well. But look, the story's fun. It's Janet Jameson, it's Robert Englund. It's overall an enjoyable, good time. It's a movie that we've already watched multiple times. We will watch more. But how do you like this movie overall as a score?
I mean, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to give this movie a 10?
Right.
Like I said, I love it. Even then, realistically, I would probably not even really give it a 10. I mean, realistically, I'd like to give this movie like an 8 or a 9 or something like that, just because how much I love this movie, its absurdness and stuff like that. But like you said, I mean, realistically, yeah, I mean, it's not an 8 or a 9 or anything like that. I mean, to me, I'm gonna go with a score, and then I'm gonna bump it up just to let you guys know. So I'm
Okay.
gonna go with a 6 to begin with, because I think this movie's fun. It's entertaining. I love everybody, and I love Jenna Jameson. I love Robert Englund, and I love the fact that Tito runs like a little bitch, and that's perfectly. But the reason why I'm going to give it up a little bit higher, 6.5, and maybe depending on what we score, like I said, we'll have to look and see how we score, Shock 'em Dead. But 6.5 right now, just because the fact that you got titties, titties, titties throughout this whole entire movie. It's an X-rated movie, where, an X-rated porn star is going to be in this movie and stuff like that. So it's one of those ones where, when you're thinking about that, it's one that you're gonna think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna go, okay. Even when we talk about Shock 'em Dead and Tracy Lord's things, you're gonna be like, okay, she's a real actress. She's really
Yeah.
acting. Jenna Jameson, did you really do very much acting? You're pretty much doing a lot of the same shit that you were already doing before, but then just adding a little bit extra of that ness. I mean, some people might say that. I don't agree with that. I think she did an excellent job. I think she was really, really cool. And like I
Yeah.
said, I think it's just a fun movie with her. But then again, like I said, I'm a huge Jenna Jameson fan. I've always been a fan of her. She's probably my top, like, I'd say top two or top three favorite ex porn, or war porn stars or whatever like that have been in the industry. So, like I said, to me, I would love to give this movie a lot higher, but I'm gonna, like I said, I think a 6, but then bump it up to a 6.5, just because you got lots of titties. It's not only Jenna Jameson titties, you got titties everywhere. You got titties that when they're zombie, there's still more titties, and then you get to see you
So
get to
many
see
titties, dude.
you get to see billiard balls being kegled out of a vagina, although you don't get to see the vagina, but you still get the premise of where they're coming from. So, what's not to love? I'm gonna definitely give it a 6.5 for right now.
No problem. That sounds good, my friend, as like a place to like start us off at for sure. Because you definitely make good points, and it's a good time for sure when it comes to that. Now, here's the thing: when it comes to Shock 'em Dead, the craziest thing about this movie is it is an older movie, and the way it's shot, the way it's edited, everything about it is definitely older. Zombie Strippers is 100% a more modern movie. I will say to start off though, because I know we're probably going to have a little bit of conversation after this, which is totally fine. The idea, the story behind Shock 'em Dead, I do believe is an overall stronger story to be told. And this is why I say it this way. So here's basically the premise of Shock 'em Dead is it's one of those, and Devil, you should know this better than anybody. It's a deal with the devil movie. It's the idea of somebody who's just failing at life, working a modern day job, wants a better life, wants to be special, wants to be looked at and admired, and gets the opportunity basically to, for lack of a better term, to make a deal with the devil to become this epic rock star. And that's the premise of the movie. It's very similar to Trick or Treat. It has that stylistic similarity. Now, this movie just kind of plays out overly differently than that. This movie is basically about a guy who is given everything he could want. He tries out for this band, he fails in fucking astronomical proportions, but is all of a sudden able to be this just amazing musician, this rock star. He's got the look, he's got the style, he's got the playing ability. Tracy Lords is the manager of the band that he joins. He basically takes it over, but then the murders start to happen. It's just the idea of like you're wishing for a better life. You want to be seen on this level and you're given it, but now what are you going to do to keep your pedestal and keep your level? And that was the thing I always loved about this movie is I've always loved the story arc of this movie. I'll even precursor it, just like Devil said. This is a movie that I would love to give a 9, 10 to. I watch it multiple times every year. I just genuinely love this movie. Again, I'll get more into it later when it's apropos. But I have a personal tie to this movie that I've already talked about on the episode. But I do like the way this movie plays out. The difference, in my opinion, when it comes to Shock 'em Dead versus Zombie Strippers is like Shock 'em Dead has a story to be told, where Zombie Strippers really does just kind of put it out there for you. You kind of understand right from the start what you're getting. But it's the idea of like, a loser who gets this like deal with the devil to become the man. And the problem is, what are you going to do to stay at the top of the heap without being exposed to the fact that you signed in blood to get what you wanted?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the funny thing about this movie. I'm gonna go into it to begin with, but I think it's just funny. I'm gonna dissect your words for a couple seconds. I think it's
Totally.
funny. You're like, it has a story to tell. I mean, granted, versus zombie strippers doesn't isn't a it's not a 100-page dysentery story. You know what I mean? It's literally you write on a one note piece of paper, zombies, strippers. There you go. You got the whole entire story. Now, like I
Champ.
said, that being said, I really don't think they're breaking the mold when it comes to this one either. It's about a
You're
rock star
not. No, no, you're right. You're
that
right.
wants to be famous and gives him, signs the sells his soul to the devil and stuff like that. But when he does it, I think it's funny. Like, okay, so first of all, he goes in, he plays like shit. To me, I think it's weird that whenever you do the devil, you would think that everybody would be included in the signing of the devil, signing the soul, but apparently, like, he's the only one that has really any talent because if you watch everybody in this movie, they suck whatsoever. That singer is like the worst singer I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know what
Dude,
he's trying to do. I don't
that's a
know whether or not
song.
I don't know whether or not he's being like that kind of cliche, flamboyant kind of guy or whatnot. I have no idea. What the outfits that he wears, I have no idea. And then all of a sudden, like I said, this guy's bad. He becomes this cool ass devil, worshiping, rock star that can shred like crazy. And you can definitely tell it's not him, even though we talked about it, it's not him playing it. So it's so funny. But Jesus Christ, could they have chose a worse wig for this dude to wear?
I know.
I get the look because was the look of like, of like Motley Crue and Poison and this kind of like look, where you go or even more into like more of the devil ones like, like Warlock and all those kind of people and all these like heavy metal guys. I get it with the black hair and the long and stuff like that, but it looks so bad on this actor. It's worse than Steel Panther's wig. It's worse than Satchel's wig when you see him.
I know, Devil. And here's the thing about that. Because again, we can't talk about this review without, again, this is my guy, so this is more my level and my style. So here's the funny thing about that is like, fun fact to this movie, because I interviewed him and we talked about this movie because not only am I a fan of the movie, which I genuinely am, I'm a fan of the musician it was based around. Here's the thing. Stephen Quadros, which is actually kind of funny because we were talking about Tito Ortiz. Stephen Quadros, the actor that plays Angel Michael is actually a professional like fighter announcer. Not a fighter, but he used to be the play-by-play announcer for Pride fighting in Japan. He's been referred to as the fight doctor. Like he's very educated on MMA fighting. So but he is a very established um he is a very established actor, but he's also a very established musician. A lot of people don't know that in reality, Stephen Quadros was the drummer for the band Snow, which used to have Carlos Cavazo from Quiet Riot in that band. So Stephen does know music. So anyway, the funny thing about this terrible wig that Stephen is wearing is a fun fact for all the Fangs and Infernos who didn't know this, and this is actually real information from an interview that I conducted. Devil and I are currently stationed out of Maryland, and Michelangelo Badio, who was the stunt guitar player for Steven for this movie, came to town. And, I went to his show. Again, I'm a big fan, my favorite guitar player. I asked him if we could do an interview. He was like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's do it. So I talked to him for a little while, and one of the things I addressed was this movie. He actually said that he was actually supposed to be the lead actor in this movie, which is one of the reasons why the character's name is Angel Michael, because his name is Michael Angelo Badio. But his consistent touring schedule and the fact that he like was really burnt out, he was like, dude, I fucking flubbed my audition. It was so bad. But they had a guy in reserve in case I wasn't good enough. That was Stephen Quadros. But anyway, if you look back at the old Nitro videos, which was his main band at the time of this movie, that's why Stephen looks as outrageously bad wigged as he is. Is because that was Michael's hair at the time. Huge, big, fucking Aquanet everywhere.
But that was his real hair.
That was his real hair, unlike Steven, which is incredibly Spirit Halloween. But that's kind of the funny thing behind it. But just like Devil was saying, like, while I still stand behind the fact that there's a story to be told, it doesn't change the fact that he's right also. It's that chemistry, that kind of pre-written, understood, been there, done that of guy makes a deal with the devil. In this case, it's about music. Other people make a deal like Devil's Advocate. I love that movie. It's the idea of like making a deal with the devil, protection, being the most epic lawyer, winning every case, so on and so forth. But that's just kind of the fun story behind Shock 'em Dead. But anyway, getting back on to Tracy Lords, because I do want to kind of bring her in on this, of course, because it's kind of the purpose of the entire episode, is the fact that she's basically the band's manager. She takes care of everything. And it's the idea of like trying to keep everything in perspective, but also keeping everything like from getting completely out of whack. Because as Steven's character is taking over and really just decimating everybody. Because the thing that's so insane is he's this amazing guitar player that's again portrayed by Michael. You've also got this epically terrible singer, like really fucking bad. The song that they're like singing for the auditions and like the battle of the bands, even when it comes to an 80s movie, this is bad for an 80s rock song. Like that kind of I'm a love machine, but like not even on even that level. Like it's a tragically terrible song. But I do love the fact that like Michael's character comes in and is like, no, dude, you're fired. This is my shit now. I'm taking over. But also, that being said, that band was never going to go anywhere because the style of the music, because the lead singer of that band would definitely had that LSD. He had that lead singer disease because the stuff that he was singing, the stuff that he was like, this is the best song ever. In reality, even as a fan or even as a person simply watching the movie, it is not good.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing about it. That's what I said. That's the funny part about this movie was like, you got the one guy who sells it and he's really, really big and yeah, he's gonna make it big and maybe he'll be a good guitarist and maybe he'll be like, somebody like we've talked about with like John Five or something like that that will jump and, be with this band or help make this band big or whatever like that. But yeah, to me it would be more like you would think that it would be more of like, okay, we're gonna do this to get this band big, we're gonna do this deal to get this band big. And like you said, yeah, that band is just horrible. I mean,
Oh,
other than the shreds that that he shreds through this whole thing, it's like it's just so bad. And then like you said, I mean, he Tracy Lords is with the I believe the bass player and stuff like that, and he's just like this kind of dude. He's not that bad, but you know what I mean. It's just like kind of funny. Like no wonder she's gonna be wooed by the more like this heavy metal dude and all of a sudden, he sells his soul, and then all of a sudden he wakes up and he's got this big, huge, giant house. He's got three freaking hot chicks, and then you find out that they sold their soul, soul for the devil and stuff like that too. And one was disfigured, one was burnt, and one was
yeah.
all jacked up and stuff like that. And I thought it was an interesting thing where like it was really cheesy and really horrible as far as the way they did it. But I thought it was kind of cool where it was like, when they killed somebody, they kind of just sat on top of them and kind of like sucked in their essence, kind of thing. I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of like a cool idea, but just badly done. But yeah, it's so crazy. Like this movie was just like, what the hell is going on the whole entire time?
You're not wrong, Devil. No, you 100% are. And the idea of like, taking people out to stay on top because we fucking off the singer. That dude is just like pieced out in like epic fashion. And the funny thing about that too is like he's like locked out of the venue. Like it's so bizarre the way they decided to do it as well, where it's like, hey, I'm the lead singer of the band. This is my band. And the dude can't even get like back into the venue, which I always thought was kind of hilarious. And then he was ended up like basically just kind of like offed in a car, which I thought was hilarious in its own right as well. But there's so much that's just kind of like bizarre when it comes to this movie. But like overall, Devil, I mean, it's a it's a fun movie, dude. Like I can't pretend like a movie coming out of the 80s because the movie was technically released in the early 90s, but there's nothing more 80s than this movie when it comes to it. It's just kind of like the idea like of it where you've got, Tracy's character Lindsay as like the manager of a band just kind of trying to keep things in perspective. And that was the thing that's really the basis of this. And that was the thing that I thought made for such a fun showdown is the ideas of neither one of these movies are trying to reinvent the wheel. You've got zombie strippers with Jenna Jameson. It's pretty much right out there. Shock 'em Dead doesn't have quite as clear of a title concept, but at the same time, you're not really worried too much when it comes to it. It's just the idea of like a band manager trying to keep their shit together while trying to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing about it. Like I guess like when you go with the title "Shock 'Em Dead," I think maybe they were just trying to shock 'em dead with that horrible wig or the singing of the lead singer is gonna try to shock 'em dead. I think the funniest part and the best part of this whole entire movie is at the very end where it's like, hey, what's that music playing? That you have the other band and they're like, hey, let's go check them out, and they're just like, this is pretty crazy, like not realizing that they're fighting for the death for real life and all this crazy shit's going on. They're like, oh wow, this is a pretty crazy show. Like as long as they don't mess up my guitar, he talks about this one guitar that's super freaking rare and all. I'm like, yep, that guitar is getting fucked up by the end of the night. You know what I mean? It's like it's just crazy. I love that they're just like sitting there like, what the hell is going on? Like they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna watch this epic craziness and you're like, what? No one's realizing, like, they're like that it's not that what they're seeing is like not really a show. They're like, man, they're like they think it's like some Alice Cooper shit going on or something like that. I'm like, it's just so funny. I love that. I love that. Just like the other band's just like, yeah, man, these guys are pretty crazy.
Yes. No, 100% devil for sure. So when it comes to the obituaries, we've already covered it when it comes to zombie strippers. The thing is, it's very much like you talked about when it comes to zombie strippers. Shock 'em Dead, if it was up to me, look, a movie just gives me everything I like in a movie. It's a simplistic concept. It goes from point A to point B with not a lot of brain power. You just enjoy it. It's fun for what it is. It's not epic on any level. It's very 80s. Like I said, this movie came out in 1991, but like it's very 80s. Again, for myself, it's got my favorite guitar player. It's got somebody who I've since come to really love in movies like with Tracy Lords, and it's 80s rock music. It's just fucking awesome. So for me, fucking 9 to 10 on the obituaries. In reality, not so much. Just like you were saying with zombie strippers, it's probably about a 6. But again, I do have a love affair with this movie, similar to what you had with zombie strippers. That does bump at a point. I have a personal connection to this movie. I do enjoy it consistently with that trick or treat feel of storytelling. So I do give it a 6.5 as well. Both of our movies do come down to a 6.5. So we have a little bit of like conversation to talk about. What I like about Shock 'em Dead versus Zombie Strippers, they both have incredibly simplistic concepts. But I do love the fact that Tracy has the ability, well, not even had the ability to continue on in bigger, potentially better roles. I love Michael's influence as being able to play that musical style. And again, the fact that Stephen Quadros is the main character, even though his wig is horrific, has a musical background and the ability to understand that vibe. But I do also like the fact that this movie is a little bit more of a movie. With Zombie Strippers, it's in the title. The cast definitely matches. Robert's great, Jenna's hilarious, billiards and pool balls galore, and sin and skin. Everything that we'd love right there. There's just a little bit more in I feel like the overall style that Shock 'em Dead brings to a potential movie experience that I do feel kind of gives it an overall edge as opposed to a no pun intended kind of brainless good time. That's just kind of my opinion and feeling on the situation. I do give Shock 'em Dead a very, very slight advantage overall, but I do think they're both an equally great time.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones where like you said, when we do these and stuff like that, you got like that. Like I said, taking it far as a movie, with the porn stars and Stacey Lords definitely has a better movie career versus Jenna Jameson. But then again, we've always talked about, both with, both movies, we talk about originality and stuff like that. Neither one are really original, so you got to kind of throw that out of the thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, between the two movies, you definitely have the bigger star in Zombie Strippers, with Robert
Yes.
Englund being the bigger name that's going to draw people. And that's the only thing that I think, when if you're going by both of them kind of being at where the needle's going to lay, it's going to be one of those ones, like kind of like when we do the showdowns, when we do like something that's popular that more people are going to see versus like these like smaller kind of independent films, like when we were talking about like, witches or things like that, you know what I mean? Like, people aren't gonna know that. If you go into the general horror senses of people who go see horror movies and you ask them, have you seen Zombie Strippers? Have you seen Shock 'em Dead? And I'm going from asking everybody. Now granted, yes, younger people aren't going to know Shock 'em Dead as much
So
versus people who have been in the 80s. So that's what I'm saying. If we're going and asking anybody who's 50 to younger about horror movies, 90% of the people are not going to know what Shock 'em Dead is. It's definitely one that people are going to know, and those people, people are going to know that film. And it's not like it's so independent that nobody knows this movie. I mean, obviously, a lot of people know about this movie, but I feel like if you were going to ask people about whether or not which one they've seen, more people probably would have seen Zombie Strippers over
true.
that, just because, not necessarily because it's a newer film, but because the fact that it does have Jenna Jameson, which, like I said, you have that Tracy
It,
Lords, and people who are
it's
Tracy
got
Lord
that
fans.
1-2 punch.
But that Robert England one is going to draw people who are horror fans more. Now, people who are Tracy Lord's fan who do like her are going to go and check out this film and be like, "Oh, this is a pretty cool. Okay, I like Tracy Lords. I like her in this, or I liked her in that. I like her in Blade. Let's go see. Let's go see what she did. Okay, I can't watch any of these stuff because when she was doing the X-rated stuff and whatnot. But fuck off, people. Give me 10 minutes." It's like, Jesus. Fuck you. I just told you to fucking no, scammers.
Stop
God
fucking
damn.
with the devil.
I know, man. These fucking scammers, man. I accidentally bumped and hit to answer them, and it says the phone's out of fucking service. How the fuck do you call me, and then 2 seconds later your phone's out of service? Fuck you, scammers. Anyway, the devil was gonna talk about it, but yeah, like I said, when it comes to these showdowns and things like that, we've always discussed that where like what's the popularity, what's the populace going to be. So it's one of those ones where I'm gonna let you decide, because it's kind of in the middle and I don't really want it can go either way. What do you think, just because of that? Do we want to bump, Shock 'em Dead, just because the fact that, overall, yes, it's a better story movie, even though it's not much of a story to it. But versus zombies, I mean, it's mindless zombies. Or the fact that, like you said, more people are gonna know
Yeah,
and see zombie strippers over Shock 'em Dead. Now, like I said, if we would have done zombie strippers versus like Blade, or
right.
zombie strippers versus like, another Tracy Lords movie, some maybe another bigger Tracy Lords movie. Yeah, if you'd done on Blade and we both gave, I mean, we wouldn't have gave Blade 6.5, but let's just say for some reason we gave them both the same score, I would definitely agree that people, even though people would know zombie strippers too, people are going to relate towards more Blade more than that. So
Yeah.
what do you feel about that?
So here's the thing, like, and I did take that into consideration because again, I love the Blade series. It's fantastic. And Tracy is Tracy, she's fantastic. One of the reasons why I did go with this movie is there's two reasons. One, I know people would have thought I would have gone with a Blade movie, and that's totally understandable. Is that with this particular category kind of being focused on the X-rated part, I wanted to do a Tracy movie where she was a more prominent figure. That was really what it came down to. Yes, I'm not going to pretend like I haven't been dying to talk about Shock 'em Dead, because I absolutely have. Because it definitely has a, potential spoiler, but it has that kind of why not feel to it. Like, why not talk about Shock 'em Dead? Because it's fucking awesome. Now, here's the thing, Devil. You have an incredibly valid point. And I'm going to follow it up with a curiosity question for you that might swing the needle back to you about where we should score this. Now, everything you said is 100% correct. The thing about Jenna Jameson and Robert Englund is it's got 100% a 1-2 punch as far as the common populace when it comes to horror fans that you and I talk about regularly. Here's the fun thing, though. You and I are going to meet Tracy Lord soon. Do we want to have the advantage of telling her that she won?
I think we've done interviews before where people have won and people have lost. I think
That we have. I just
that we
couldn't
have,
help
you know.
myself but pose it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those ones. But I don't know. It's one of those ones where like, is she gonna feel that her movie is still better than and then I don't know. That one would have to be a wait because like it could be one of these movies that Tracy's like, not that she's not gonna be happy to sign some of that stuff, but she
Oh, of
might
course.
just be like,
I'm bringing it.
she
You
might
know
just be
that.
like, oh God, like. I really
No,
didn't hate. I hated making this movie or whatever like that. You never, yeah, like I said, we don't, or it could be like, oh my god, this was like the best movie I've ever worked on. I kind of feel like she's gonna enjoy most of the other ones, especially ones that where she's worked with like John Waters or working with Kevin Smith and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm like, you
I,
know what I mean?
I no, I'm with you, Devil. And I think the bottom line is Jenna Jameson and Robert England. That's what's going to resonate with the horror populace, the Fangs, the Furnos, and the RIPs. The fact of the matter is, Tracy Lords, Stephen Quadros, and even a subplot of Michelangelo Bedio for people who are into that scene. They're going to understand, they're going to be passionate, but that's not reality. So I think that's simply what it comes down to is the 1-2 punch of Tracy and Steven. It just doesn't quite match up to the common populace and the 1-2 punch of Jesus Christ, Jenna Jameson and Robert England. I think that's
Plus
just kind of the
titties.
bottom line. Exactly. With the abundance of insane amounts of titties and pool ball execution. So I think that's what it comes down to, Devil. While it comes out to an incredibly close situation, I think the bottom line is Zombie Strippers is just gonna take the lead because of the star power.
Yep, I agree.
Absolutely. That's the way it's going to be. Fangs and Infernos, 100%. We've had some really tight battles, and this one is definitely right up there. But by a little bit of, let's just say a little bit of like pool cue chalk, we're going to give this one to Zombie Strippers with a slight edge over Shock 'em Dead. So, Devil gets the victory on this one as we talk about our X-rated episodes between Shock 'em Dead, Zombie Strippers, and Zombie Strippers gets the victory. So that's the way it's going to be there, friends. Victory to the devil on this one. Of course, we appreciate everything that you guys do. When it comes to supporting ourselves, we really, really appreciate everything that you guys do. But by supporting us, that means you're also supporting our very dearest friends in Mark and Lizzie at Rock and Horror Apparel. They take care of all of the merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast. Make sure that you guys are going to rockandhorror.com, just like Guns and Roses. That's where you want to go. Go to the Vampire and Devil collab category, and you will see all of the merch that they take care of for us that you guys can purchase and buy. Keep in mind that anytime Rock and Horror is doing a deal, doing a sale, any kind of discount codes, those apply for us. So don't be shy. Make sure that if you see something like, hey, it's, Summerween or, goth this or goth that, anything that Mark and Lizzie feel is appropriate for their website does apply to any merch for Vampire and Devil. Also, if you love your creepy decor, Twisted Vines, please make sure you guys check them out. Saren, Chris, so good to us. Always take care of us. Do amazing Ouija boards, do amazing jewelry, all kinds of stuff in between. When it comes to feeling chilly in this type of weather, keep it hot like the devil. Brutalities, that is your way to do things. Amazing selection. Devil and I are big Wednesday 13 fans. We get to see him in the very near future as of the recording of this episode. And we're really, really stoked to see our friends in Wednesday again. And it's a great lineup. He's there. He's playing with a band out of Germany called Lord of the Lost, as well as another band that I'm very fond of in Birthday Massacre. I think they're fantastic. Devil likes them as well. It's going to be a great lineup. Myself, Mrs. Vamp, Mrs. Devil, Devil. It's going to be a great time. And we also have a bunch of friends and family coming out to that show as well. So shout out to our friends in Wednesday 13 for that, tying it into brutalities, because there's, I believe, Devil, 4 different Wednesday 13 brutalities that our Fangs and Infernos can check out. And when it comes to supporting small businesses and amazing museums, please make sure that you're getting out to our friend John Kozik at the Salem Witchboard Museum up in Massachusetts, or here in Baltimore at the Baltimore Witchboard Museum. And of course, we got to give our shout outs and our love to our buddy Chris. We had a great time, myself, Devil, Mrs. Vamp, at the Buffalo Bill House in Perryopolis, Pennsylvania. We had a great time. Get out there, hang out, stay the night in a legit piece of history and and filmography, because they did turn the Buffalo Bill House from Silence of the Lambs into a bed and breakfast for you guys to be able to stay. It's a great time. We really, really appreciate all of Chris's courtesies, and we're definitely looking forward to our next stay. But that's going to take it for right now. That's going to take us off when it comes to this conversation. Again, victory for Devil. It's going to be our X-rated showdown, and Devil takes it home with his sin and skin, as by a slight margin, but still a victorious margin nonetheless. Robert England, Jenna Jameson, Zombie Strippers takes out Stephen Quadros and our beloved Tracy Lords for Shock 'em Dead in a very, very close one. Tracy, we look forward to seeing you in the near future. We really appreciate everything you do. And Robert, Jenna, love you to death. But that's the way it's going to be. That's the way we're going to sign off. We will see you guys very soon. Horns up. Fangs out.
Devil, my friend, I think we should have a little quick conversation about everybody's respectful celestial abodes, where it be my little coffin where I lay my head at night, or at times that you feel that you just want to go back down to make sure that hell's not getting out of whack while you are away. Let's talk about it. Vampire and Devil's newest partnership in Twisted Vines, our dear friends, Chris and Sarah and Cadaver.
Oh yeah, you like scary stuff, you like horror decor, come and check out Twisted Vines. They make all the kind of cool shit, all for your house, all kinds of scary shit. They love it. You like to bring back the horror, you want to scare your neighbors, you want to conjure up a friend to talk to, you want to conjure up somebody bad, you want to do some bad stuff to them, you go to Twisted Vines and get some of their merch.
Absolutely, for sure. Everything is completely handmade by them. So if you need a little friend, maybe a round set abode, maybe you want to conduct a little evil towards a friend that was a friend, maybe no longer a friend. They have voodoo dolls they can do for you to allow for such activities. But you know how much we love our Ouija boards, my friend, and they make all of those by hand. They took care of your beloved vampire with a nice Nosferatu board, but the devil, he happens to be a Munsters fan. And not only do they do boards as traditional rectangles, but they can put a little bit of coffin flair in them.
Oh yeah, look at that coffin shape Munster board. Yeah, you wanna conjure up Mr. Herman? You wanna ask him how Pet Cemetery was? You can do it on this board. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. So again, thank you so much to Twisted Vines for partnering with the Vampire and Devil podcast, and make sure that you Fangs and Infernos are checking them out on their Facebook page, on their Instagram pages, and making sure that you are checking them out as they move around the country, showing their craft off at all of the various horror cons and oddities expos that they love to do. So absolutely, my friend, of course, man, horns up, fangs out for our friends at Twisted Vines.
Oh yeah. What's up? It's the Devil here, and we're gonna talk about more devilish movies with the devil inside of it. This time we're gonna talk about The Unholy with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, William Sadler, and Cary Elves. Have you seen this yet? Ooh, is it spooky? Is it scary? Is it entertaining? I don't know. Maybe you should check it out, because guess what? If you don't, the devil might come and see you. Or maybe they won't. I don't know. Anyway, it's a pretty cool movie. You know, that typical good versus evil, religious blah, 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 blah. It's got Jeffrey Dean Morgan. That's all that matters. Negan is gonna kick your ass. Then anyway, check it out before he brings Lucille to visit you.
Devil, my friend, I think it's safe to say that we've had a very successful start to season number 3. We've had some great conversations. We've got we had a really gnarly, director that we got to kick off the season with, as well as one of our early episodes. But now I think it's time that we get a little bit infected. And while it's fun to always talk zombies and infections and everything in between, I think you and I have made for some pretty cool choices when it comes to infections, viruses, zombies, and how exactly that works. Because we had interesting conversations when we were talking about movies, like what might be cool in this way. We were talking a little bit about like a specific movie that I was kind of interested in, but at the same time, it falls into the category of a director episode that we're planning in the very near future. So, nope, can't do that. So, we decided to go the direction of like Japanese viruses and zombies, man. We got Train to Busan and we've got the sadness, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, when it was going into it, everybody likes infections, everybody likes viruses and all that kind of stuff like that. I mean, it might be a little too soon because, we just got out of a pandemic, but that's beside the point.
Nah,
Anyway, but we'll talk about that later. But
they can
anyway,
be, they can be sad. The
yeah.
other, the Fangs and Infernos can be sad. We're
Yeah,
happy.
yeah, it was pretty cool because, like I said, whenever you came out with with your pick with the sadness when we talk about that, and it was kind of cool. And I like after watching it, I wish I would have seen this movie first because if I would have seen this movie first, I would have paired it with another virus movie that's very similar called Mayhem, which it
Oh,
would have been
mayhem. Yeah.
yeah with Steven Yeun and all that because it's very similar style, very like the bases of those two movies are somewhat similar where
Mhm.
sadness is more of like not typically it's a virus movie, it's not typically a zombie movie, it's more of like getting rid of like parts of your brain that makes you want to do stuff where Train to Busan is predominantly a zombie film, but
Zombie movie. Yeah.
a little bit different, but it's still, I mean, it's still a virus film, it's still very viral. So I was just like, let's just do, we'll just keep it in the, in the Asian horror family, and this is a talk about it. And like I said, I mean, what's not to talk about with with these movies? Like I said, I mean, as far as like when Train Busan came around, I mean that was at the point of the time. I think now it's not as much. I think there's been a few more movies that came out. But at the
Mhm.
time, it was considered one of the biggest blockbusters in in South Korea's
Yeah.
history and stuff like that. It was such a huge that movie just blew up, you know what I mean? Not only just in that country, but in in the whole world. Everybody was kind of watching that and stuff like that. And it had that, it's got, when we get into that, yeah, it's got that, the age old question of movies, like if there's zombies, like straight up zombies coming out of the ground, Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead, that kind of stuff. Yeah, Shaun of the Dead maybe a little bit. It should be very that like that. This is more of like kind of like Train to Busan. When we talk about that, it's more of that like 28 days kind of virus kind of thing. Where I mean I mean they're technically saying they're zombies, but I mean are they really zombies? No, they're more of like just this infecting and stuff like that. It's not really just like dead people coming back from the grave. You kind of have to be bitten, or something's got to come to it. So it's like it's gonna be a fun. Both movies are very similar in a certain way, but there are a lot of differences in between both of these films. So it's gonna be gnarly. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of deaths, a lot of killing, and a lot of people being bitten, and even some skin and some sin, and when it comes to the sadness, there's
Yeah.
some fornication going on.
There's a lot of fornication going on there, Devil, for sure. And that's the other thing too, before we jump right into it when it comes to the sadness. I think it's also because like, I think when it comes to the pairing of these two movies, I do think they work, of course, and I totally get where you're coming from as well. I just think this also happened to be one of those like, just kind of unique cases of like, where you turn me on to a lot of movies, but this was a movie that at the time, you were familiar with, you knew about it, you just hadn't seen it. So it was
Yeah.
kind of one of those type of situations where there's a lot of movies that you bring to my attention where I'll have heard the name, I'll have been familiar with it, but I couldn't really say here or there. well, with movies like Revenge, which we talked about, movies like Triangle and stuff like that, where like I knew these movies, I knew what they were about, but I wasn't really that familiar with them per se. They turned out to be really great movies that I love that you turned me on to them and stuff like that. Where with this movie, this was a movie that I had heard, The Sadness was a movie I had heard a lot of hype about. It really kind of came in and just it really kind of flipped the virus genre a little bit. Like a lot of people were talking about it. And the funny thing about it too is like the reason I'm laughing is because every time I hear people go absolutely nutty over a movie, I'm always the guy that leaves disappointed, or I'm the guy that's like, I mean, it was cool. I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was all that. And I don't mean that to sound to any of the Fangs and Infernos that I'm like the Debbie Downer that goes to horror movies. It's like, oh my God, vampires, that guy who's going to overly dissect and he's going to suck all the fun out of all of the goodness of this movie, no pun intended. But I'm like, it's one of those things where I was like, this movie it's a Shudder movie and it came out like with a lot of aggression and people were like very holy shit about this movie. And because there's other movies like that, well, not like this, but like that I still stand on my little platform and I feel justified in how I feel about certain things. Like we talked about it a little bit off the air and we've talked about it in other instances as well. A movie like The Strangers. So like I like The Strangers. I do. When it comes into the other movies, that's a conversation for another day. But if I'm specifically talking about The Strangers, there's nothing particularly bad about that movie at all. But I remember my brother one time, Brother Vamp kind of hit me up and one time and he was like, dude, I saw this movie called The Strangers and it's so up your alley. You would really love this movie. The twist at the end is epic. It's amazing. And I'm like, sweet, I like it. Awesome, because this was long after it had been in theaters, long after it had been out on DVD. And eventually I was able to, I picked it up and I was like, okay, let's check this out. Brother Vamp was super high on this movie, so let me check it out. That movie ended and I'm like, huh? Why was this supposed to be all the rage in horror? Like, it didn't suck, but it wasn't all that. And I still stand on that platform to this day. Um, but anyway, when it comes to The Sadness, it was a movie that definitely came in with a little bit of like fun hostility. It really came in with a, full like no, the train was on the tracks, tying it in with Train to Busan. Like it really was plowing over some stuff. And yeah, we've got a lot of like virus sin and skinning and all that kind of stuff. But this is an overall, it's a really cool, it's a unique take on viruses. It's really, really brutal. I mean, one of the first scenes that really stands out to me are these infected people just fucking seal clubbing the fuck out of this guy with baseball bats, where he's just unrecognizable. But it's just the idea of this virus that's taking people over. And it's like you said, and it's taking advantage of their parts of the brain where they're very cognizant of what they're doing, but I don't mean it in a way of like, oh my God, I'm beating the shit out of this person, but why? Why am I doing this? I don't hate this person. I don't mean it like that. It's that these people are genuinely still, they're still kind of connected with their emotions. Like they're still familiar with being human and their brain like kind of waves and mechanisms and stuff like this. But this virus has just taken them over in such an extreme and savage way. And I love the practical effects. I love the blacked out eyes, just the idea of possession and the way this virus takes over. But it's a heavy, heavy, brutal movie, Devil.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, I mean that's the thing about this movie that's kind of like, like I said, when we compare it to, where zombie movies are more of like the 28 Days Later. Because if you watch, I mean, like 28 Days Later, maybe not as much, maybe 28, what's it, Weeks Later? Is that the second one? Yes, Weeks.
Yeah.
The more of the weeks, because that main, when the dad finally gets, transferred, you can tell he knows what he's doing. He's looking around. He's actually following people and stuff like that. So, he still has some of his cognitive features and he can still think where he's not like a mindless zombie that's just going after whatever
Yeah.
makes noise and stuff like that. Where when we get to like versus like some of the people in Train to Busan, where they're more of that smell, sight, sound, where these guys are more
A little more
like
traditional.
they're yeah, this more like that. And like I said, I thought that was really really cool about this movie. I love the fact that yeah, you have that one dude that's like on the train and stuff, on the subway, and he's talking to those girls and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, he goes crazy, and he just like, I can smell you, and I want to do all this stuff. And he's like, the fact that he's like, they're running around and they're going through all those little sections and train sections and trying to get out of this place and stuff like that. And he's just continually following her the whole entire time to the point where eventually later on in the movie, she gets to this hospital and all this kind of stuff like that, and then some bad shit goes down and all of a sudden he's right there on the glass again. You're like, oh fuck, this dude's back again, man. Like to the point where he's just he just followed them. And I love that sense where yeah, it's just crazy. I love going into the movie. Obviously I love the crazy when they're in the hospital, the orgy of the dead, if you want to call it, or something like that, where it was just literally like bodies on bodies on bodies on bodies just grinding. And I don't know if anybody was actually doing anything remotely sexual as far as real, but they were humping whatever body parts they could get to, you know what I mean? It was just
Yeah.
craziness. It was like it was cool. And I like that, I love the fact that that this movie had had all that kind of stuff. It had the crazy kills, but it also had like that the scientist guy that's trying to figure out everything. And
Hmm.
him with the girl and stuff like that, doing all this and doing all that, and then like puts the handcuffs on her, and you're like, oh god, this is gonna go crazy and shit like that. But yeah, I like it. Like I said, it kind of had that feel of like a very like 28 days later kind of feel to it, where it's got a little bit of like science into it, and they're talking about this virus, and it's very, and even in the movie, it's very like corona kind of virus, kind of like,
Yeah.
kind of feel to it as well too, when they're talking about it to begin with, and all that kind of stuff like that. But yeah, I thought it was a cool, it's just a cool, inventive, new way of like just doing it. Like I said, I mean, it definitely, like I said earlier, it definitely reminded me a lot of that Mayhem, because in that, you know, they're talking, and if people haven't seen that movie, they're in an office setting that has like 60 stories in this office, and he's trying to get from point, floor one to floor 60 to get the boss. And everybody has this virus, and this virus is in their eyes, and you can tell it's in their eyes because their eyes are all red, makes them lose all those ambition stuff. So if you want to kill somebody, you just kill somebody. You want to have sex with somebody, you're having sex. You want to do this, it just gives rid of all those like parts of your brain that tell you you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. You just do it. And you got 60 floors of this. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. I love that, where it's like, yeah, you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know, whether or not those people are gonna eat you, or they're gonna do this, or they're gonna try to do, but you're trying to make it out the whole entire time. And it was just a cool, like I said, like you said, I remember hearing about this movie and, hearing things about it, but I just haven't seen it yet. I haven't got the chance to check it out. And then when like I said, when you were like, hey, I want to do this, I was like, hell yeah, this seems pretty cool. And like I said, it was one of those ones where it's like, yeah, this was a cool movie. I liked it. It was, I mean, it wasn't, reinventing the wheel when it comes to virus movies and or zombies, but it was still cool. It was still fresh. It had stuff in it that was really cool that I haven't seen in other films. But like I said, but it didn't feel like it was just another regurgitated thing. And that's the cool thing about both of these movies is like, even with Train to Busan, yeah, it's your almost traditional kind of zombie-ish kind of movie, 28 Days Later, World War Z, but it's still very, it's in a genre that's very, you know, capitalized, and there's like 9 million zombie movies and 9 million movies, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to be like anything else. It's just a movie by itself, and I think that's why it did so well. And I think that's what I like about the Sadness movie. It's like, yeah, it's got a lot of themes and a lot of things that you've seen in other horror films, and it's got little pieces and stuff like that. But just the way it was in a whole, I thought it was a really cool sort of like refreshed take of the genre.
No, for sure. And one of the things I thought was particularly interesting about this movie is it had like, and again, this also is part of kind of like Asian just cinema in general. It's like there's a lot of just what other people who aren't familiar with the genre might consider like mindless or brainless, like no pun intended, like for real, like no pun intended is like it's I mean the movie's an incredibly like it's a vicious movie. I mean like I said, you've got the clubbings with the bats, you've got stabbings, you've got this just it's a very savage movie. But the thing I also really liked about this movie, which of course plays into the title, is the idea of the characters being so aware of what's happening to them. They can't stop it. There's nothing they can really do about it. The infection is full on. And that's the thing I really like about this movie is the idea of the sadness, the idea of a person who knows they're doing bad things or is in a way doing whatever type of things, but can't do anything about it. The only thing I the only thing I kind of like am a little sad about in this movie is there's a small lack of secondary character development. I love the specific characters that this movie's about and put in the forefront because I think they're excellent. I love their execution. I'm incredibly terrible when it comes to pronunciating names, so I'm not even going to go there, especially not for an Asian movie. It's just not going to work well for me. But the main characters I love. I think the execution is great. The idea of like these being taken over and like trying to be a loving couple and then ultimately leading to infection. But the secondary characters seem a little underdeveloped, where when it comes to their deaths, there's a small part of myself that's sad, not where it's like I kind of want to have that ability at times to be like, oh, that kind of sucks. I don't like that they're dead. I wanted to see this. Or hell yeah, fuck that dude. I can't wait till that person died. There's a little bit of like underdevelopment secondarily that I would have loved to have gotten with certain scenes. But that's really just more just splitting hairs on things because overall, just like you said, Devil, I think it's a really well executed movie. I love this particular spin-off viruses, where again, I would, of course, it's a zombie movie solidly. If you're gonna compare it to something, it's a zombie movie. But the idea of, it has a small part of me that does remind me of like Land of the Dead where it's that type of, you know, progression where, yeah, George's takes on horror movies and his zombies were always still pretty basic, still pretty cut and dry, kind of mindless, out for brains, out for flesh, just kind of doing whatever. But the idea of learning or being kind of cognizant to things. And you mentioned Shaun of the Dead as well, where even at the end of the movie, well, even midway through the movie, like when Sean's stepdad gets infected and he hates the music, so he clicks off the radio of the car. Or when Ed at the end of the movie is fully infected, but he's still playing video games the way that he always was. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that, and it reminded me a little bit of what is it, Daddy Zombie or Big Daddy, Big Papa,
Yeah,
um,
Big Daddy from Land of
Big
Dead.
Big Daddy from Land of the Dead, where it's like he's starting to learn. He's understanding things. Like when one of his colleagues is just shooting off the gun for no reason, he's like, he kind of guides the gun back over and he's like, no, man, take these fuckers out. This is how you do it. And it's kind of the idea of that. But like I overall really have always liked this movie, and I discovered it maybe a year or two into its original release because it's about 5 years old now. And I always thought it was a cool movie, and it was always kind of a movie that, in fact, I've got a little bit of buyer's remorse because I did see a copy one time at one of our horror cons, and I was like, I need to pick that up. And then just us doing whatever it was we were doing, whether we were there as fans or whether we were there working, I don't remember which con it was, that I never got to circle back around. And I was like, okay, when I get my second opportunity, I need to get a copy of The Sadness. I would really, really like a physical copy of that. But I do like the idea of this movie. I found it just to be a very, very unique, proper take on infection without completely taking over your life.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing that you were talking about it, where we'll get into it more when we start talking about Train to Busan. But you're mentioning the secondary characters and stuff like that not really having an arc and not being really care.
Right.
Where that's what I love about Train to Busan is like you have those characters that you just super like and you want to see live and don't live, and you have the ones that are like, oh, that guy's a piece of shit. I can't wait for them to die. And when they die, you're like, yeah. I felt like that too with the sadness. You had the main characters that you obviously wanted to survive, and
Right.
you had the one, like I said, the one baddie that was going after the girls the whole entire time that you were kind of investing. You liked him. He was a
Yes.
cool, evil, bad guy that you were like, dude,
He's a
I
cool
like this
bad guy.
guy. So, you had those guys, and like I said, you had the doctor, and the scientist guy that you kind of felt. But yeah, everybody else that kind of just gets killed, that gets added in this movie, and either gets killed or doesn't get killed or whatever. For the most part, gets killed because pretty much everybody, pretty much other than the main chick, spoiler, pretty much dies. But
Yeah.
to the point where it was like, yeah, like that and stuff like that. And then I would if I'm gonna add a little bit extra of the I didn't particularly like the ending as much either, where it was like, she hears the helicopter on the roof or whatever, opens the door, and then that's it. And you're like, oh, okay. I mean, that was kind of I wanted to see some crazy madness going on, maybe some like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead freaking helicopter killing zombies or somebody like that, or something a little bit more,
Yeah.
filled to it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, overall, I thought the movie was really, really cool. I liked the storyline. I liked the fact that that this guy and this girl are trying to get back together, and he's trying to survive to get to her, and all within this whole entire madness of of something that like even when we go into Train to Busan, it's one of those ones where it's like people talk about in horror movies when you see like this or that, or like even like like we said, Shaun of the Dead, it's a somewhat of a city but it's not that bad. I was like, or even like in some place in like New York or LA, when you see like that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people, but like to have something like this happen in like in Korea or Japan, where there's like billions and billions of people, especially in a small tight area, especially when it comes to Train Busan, you know what I mean? Like, those people who go, you think it's bad seeing the subways in New York sometimes with it being full. Those guys in those kind of areas, man, those trains are full. Every train is
Yeah.
completely like you have this much room in between you and the next person. So imagine you're on a train with that's got 10 carts, or 10 different little things in it, and each one is filled to the max, and you get one zombie that takes one virus person or whatever like that, all of a sudden takes that person, then it takes that person, then it takes that person, and it's like, yeah, it's a lot. And like I said, even with this movie, it's one of those ones. That's why I like watching these kind of movies when it comes to like the more overpopulated areas, because it's like it's craziness where yeah, you gotta it's a lot harder to survive, especially like I said when these kind of ones, because like I said, it's not necessarily zombies, so they're cognitive, they know what they're somewhat doing, but even though they can't stop themselves from doing it, they're still
Yeah.
going around and doing it. So you're trying to not only survive the elements, but you're also trying to survive all these people and stuff like that, and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
I thought overall, I thought it was a really pretty cool movie. You know what I mean? I liked I liked the way that they did it.
Definitely, man, for sure. And yeah, while it's going to get cataloged as a zombie movie, it's an infection movie first and foremost, where it definitely has that traditional infection vibe as opposed to Train to Busan, which is a little bit more of that zombie style. But anyway, when it comes to the obituaries, I mean, I do like this movie. I do like it overall as an 8. That's not going to be my final grade. I'm going to knock it down just a scotch, but like I like it as a solid zombie and infection movie. I think it's a great take. I love the practical effects. I thought everything about the way that they did the movie is very good, is very solid. I could watch the movie more often, So again, like I said, I would like to get a physical copy of that movie down the line because it does pop up sporadically on streaming services, but it doesn't come up quite as regularly as I would like, for super access. So I know there's convention tables that are going to have it, and I'll get my hands on it probably within the year, I'm sure. But overall, I like the movie. I feel it's a really high quality 7.5, Devil. That's what I like.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I'll match you on the 7.5. I thought it was a really good movie. Thought it was well, like I said, was well executed. Yeah, it's in that realm of movies that have done it before, and you've seen that, and it's very similar to a lot of other films that are exactly the same type stuff. But it doesn't feel like you're watching another regurgitated film version of
Yeah.
it, or just a an Asian version of this film that you saw, or this version of that, or whatever like that. Yeah, like you said, it has that similarities. But yeah, I thought overall, I thought it was really, really cool. I love the fact that, it had that craziness. It's got those freaking weird, crazy kills. It's brutal as shit. It's gory as
Oh
hell.
yeah.
It's bloody as hell. It's got like I said, I mentioned earlier, the orgy of orgies or whatever. I don't know what
Yeah.
the hell was going on that hospital floor, but there were a lot of bodies doing a lot of grinding and groaning and moaning and whatnot. So
Just
I
call
thought,
it the orgy.
yeah, yeah, the floor G at the hospital. You know what I mean? It's just like, come on down to room 301 and get it going on. But anyway,
Yeah.
like I said, yeah, I thought it was a cool movie, and it's one of those ones that like I said, it's not too often that once in a while, but it's not too often that you usually pick a movie that I haven't seen. It might be a movie that maybe I haven't seen in a long time, but it has, so it was cool to see a movie that I haven't seen. Like I said, I knew of the film, I just hadn't had a chance to really go into it. It's one of those ones where I've heard about it. I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I want to watch that. And when I've got into my other ones, and then all of a sudden I'll forget about it, and then something else will remind me, oh yeah, yeah, I heard about this one. I want to watch that, put it on my list, and then forget about it again. And then,
Yeah.
like I said, when you added it, I was like, oh shit, yeah, now I finally be able to watch it. And like I said, I kind of wish I would have seen it before because I would have liked to have paired it with that Mayhem because I think those would have been really cool
Yeah.
comparisons because it's even though Steven Yeun is in this in the Mayhem one is definitely more of the same movie, same kind of arc, but East versus West.
Yes.
Where American versus Korean or Japan or whatever like that. That Asian horror versus American horror
Yeah.
of the same kind of story would have been a cool contrast to have talked about and matched back and forth about. But we'll probably throw Mayhem on there because I'm pretty sure Mayhem was directed by our good friend Joe Lynch that
I think
was
so, yeah.
with that. So we'll probably eventually end up throwing a Joe Lynch, maybe either director or one or a showdown of Joe Lynch. So I feel like Mayhem will eventually get its due diligence. But for now, yeah, for Sadness, yeah, I agree with a 7.5. I think that's a good plateau for that.
Yeah, man, perhaps maybe a Joe Lynch and Adam Green episode, maybe something
Yeah.
kind of like a combined type nature could definitely be some fun. But yeah, no, definitely. It's just like I said, slightly better story arc when it comes to characters and a little bit heavier of an ending. And that movie gets an 8 from me right across the board. But it's just like I just a little bit of the emptiness of certain characters, which again, it does not by any means make it bad. No way. It's just there's some people that just like I'm kind of getting into, but then it's kind of like whoosh, and they're gone, and I'm like, ah, shit, I wasn't done yet. So that's the only reason. But yeah, slightly more, solid ending and a little bit better story arc, and it's an absolute 8, but absolutely 7.5 when it comes to myself and Devil. Very, very solid when it comes to the sadness. Now, when it comes to Train Busan, that, like you said, Devil, and for any of the Fangs and Infernos that are already familiar with, or for ones that are learning about it right now, is a much more traditional, what you would call zombie movie. But it still starts off with a very, very kind of unique kind of build to it, where the movie just literally starts off with just straight up, just bam, we're just going to set you guys up with some roadkill, but then dude's just going to fix himself and just wander off.
Yeah, 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 it's cool. I love that. Like you said, yeah, in the very beginning, it's got that the traditional bad thing virus, the stand, people messing around with chemicals and doing stuff that they probably shouldn't do in a laboratory or whatnot. And like you said, something in the in the air or whatever. Yeah, I just love the fact that it's like it starts off like what kind of movie you're gonna get into right in the beginning, man. That deer gets mangled the fuck and then just comes back and regurts itself and it's like ah. You're like, oh yeah, even the fucking deer are gonna kill you in this movie. So
It's like, wait, I didn't realize I was watching Bambi the Reckoning.
yeah, exactly. You're like, wait, what movie am I watching again? And that's the thing about this movie, what will, with when we were talking about the the comparison to the sadness, I think a lot of that's the same too, where in this one you get a little bit more of that. We'll get into it later, but you get that stuff that we were talking about we wish that sadness had. You get those better secondary characters that you learn about and find out, and people that you like and people that you don't like, and characters that you kind of think that you're not going to really really like, but then you end up going, oh, this guy's awesome and badass, with the guy with his pregnant wife, I mean, in the movie, that guy was a super awesome character. And then, like I said, and then when we'll get into the ending, it's a way better, more epic ending than the sadness is. But it's another
Yes.
one of those ones where we're talking about where we talked about it earlier when you're talking about the sadness and hearing about hype and talking about strangers and all all these kind of movies that always get hypes. The thing about Train to Busan was this movie, no pun intended, with the train and caboose behind it. People were talking about this movie everywhere. Like I said, from
Yes.
every country, everywhere, to the point where we were talking about with Shaun of the Dead that Edgar Wright even posted something about it being like the best zombie movie he's seen in years, to the
Yeah.
point where that's like it's one of those ones like, yeah, sometimes you kind of don't want to go with the hype and with the stuff like that, especially when it comes to like Hollywood finding about these movies and like putting it out like that. I always put like an example, like when it comes to like the Oscars and all the Golden Globes, when they do all that stuff for all the big movies and stuff like that. Every year, the one who's like best picture of the year typically are movies I don't give a fuck about, like The King's Speech and some other
Yeah.
shit. Yeah, it might be the greatest movie to you, but I think it's mostly boring. The closest one that within recent years was like a movie called The Parasite, which I thought
Mhm.
was amazing, but it had so much
Yeah.
hype to it where I'm like, even the the award people are like, this fucking movie's badass, and I'm like, I don't know. And then I watched it and was like, holy shit, this movie is a freaking awesome. I love the storyline. I love that. I mean, and I'm not saying that Train Busan, I'm not sure if Train got any of those big Magic Awards. I'm pretty sure it probably did to a certain extent, but not to the masses where like that one was. But it's one of those ones where like, yeah, there was such a huge hype about this movie. And I kind of like when that first Train came around, I kind of was like, I don't know, because of it being more of that fast pace zombies. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna really like it because I think it's just gonna be another shitty like World War Z or any of that kind of stuff that they've done. And I was like, I don't know. But I mean, I'm like, well, I do like a lot of the South Korean films and stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of I think it's South, or is it North Korea? Yeah, I think it's South Korea. North Korea.
Yeah. South
North
Korea.
Korea is the bad people.
We're not getting their movies, dude.
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's South Korea. I'm like, but I like a lot of the South Korea stuff that's coming from South Korea with their films and stuff like that. So I did go on to watching this film very early. I mean, it wasn't exactly at the beginning of the height of everybody going, "Oh my God," but it was still on that plateau of everybody still talking about it. I did watch it early just
Yeah.
because I'm like, okay, it's like I said, it's a film from South Korea. I can, okay, cool. I looked at the premises, okay, whatever. And like I said, I mean, it's one of those ones where I wasn't disappointed, dude. I love this movie. It's just high-paced action throughout the whole time, nonstop. You don't know, people are getting, killed. You want to talk about a lot of dead bodies. This movie probably has like one of the biggest kill ratios in the entire world.
A
I mean, just
lot of
like
blood
I mean, it's
bodies.
just blood and guts and people that you think are gonna survive. They're going in a train and they run into it, and all of a sudden it's like boom, more freaking people and that people. Yeah, it's just craziness, and I love the whole story because it's like you kind of like don't really like this dad very much. You feel like he's just like a piece of shit kind of dad through the beginning, where he's just like, yeah, yeah, and his daughter wants to go see his mom, and blah, 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 blah. I'm busy, and I've got work, and blah, 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 and my work's more important than my family and all that. To the point where, like, you talk about a character arc and a character change, but by the time the end of before the end of the movie, you're on that train with him, man. You're just feeling for him the whole time, and it's for his daughter and him trying to survive to get to this place that more than likely is probably not going to end very good anyway. Because every place apparently, oh, the train, we're gonna stop here. They stop there and they get there and they're like, where's everybody at? Then all of a sudden, boom, another horde of freaking,
Or
infected zombies
infected.
come after them and more people coming in, more people dying. And I love the fact that there's all kinds of different characters. I mean, you got everybody. You got the dad with the kid. You got the big burly guy that you kind of weren't sure about with the pregnant wife. You got the two old ladies that you're like, okay, you got this other kind of business guy who is an asshole who, unlike the dad, stays an asshole throughout the whole entire movie. His character arc doesn't change. I love the fact that you have these like baseball players and the guy and the one guy who the girl really likes him and sits on the train next to him and they're all ooh, ooh, and he's like, I don't even like her to the point where like he kind of does like her and he's trying to help her survive. I mean, I love all these different characters that you have and you keep getting added to with more stops and people trying and getting less to do some crazy shit. And then, like I said, you gotta add when it comes to this movie and things that yeah, they're not reinventing the wheel when it comes to a lot of this stuff. It's the same kind of virus. It's the same kind of zombie stuff. You see some of that stuff. You've seen stuff on train. I don't think you've seen as many infected zombies on trains as you did in this. I even wrote in a note. I'm waiting for Samuel L. Jackson to be. I'm tired of
Yeah,
these motherfucking zombies on this motherfucking train. You know,
totally, dude.
but
No,
you know, but
100%.
but the thing about that, I think that I in that scene very often was the tunnel scene when it got in the tunnels that apparently South Korean virus zombies don't do very well in the dark.
Yeah. No, I noticed that too, for sure. And I also like the character of like the homeless guy, where it's like
Yeah.
you kind of expect him to like kind of come in and kind of start some shit. You actually kind of expect him to kind of like, fuck up everyone's universe. And it's really a different type of like design when it come to that. Like you were talking about like the athlete, like the dude just like cowering like in the chair, like with the bat just ready to fucking like you know, home run derby, some zombie brains all over the place, but he's just kind of waiting as like the zombie character is just kind of trying to like sniff it all out. And that's the thing that I do like about this movie that, you know, wasn't lost on me in the sadness, but it just wasn't as prominent in that movie, which is that character development. And I've always appreciated that. Again, like everybody knows, I'm very fondness on like backstory. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not getting any backstory in this movie. Like it's never fully explained how exactly this is a thing. They do a good job kind of like letting you know it enough of like how it how it transitions, how you become infected and run for your life if you can. But at the same time, it's not really explained that way versus there again with the sadness being more of that traditional virus infection, you get more of that history in that movie. But I also love the idea in Train to Busan when it comes to that concept of like enclosed fear. I mean, you're on a train with nowhere to go. And then at the same time, you think you get to this place where maybe you're going to be able to escape. But no, not really. All it is dropping you off, potentially dropping you off, or keeping you trapped where you're either going to get out and run for your life into a horde of zombies, or more are just going to come into your space. And now you have to try even harder to survive because now you're still in this tin can with nowhere to go and just zombies all over the place. But yeah, I do like the idea again of characters being able to like, you know, learn and traditionally like figure out exactly what is their reason for being here and what's valuable at home or valuable to where they're going. And that's the thing, like I said, that I like about story arc traditional designs. Even when something as stupid devil as putting your hand in their face.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing too about it too, which we're talking about all the cool and crazy stuff that we're talking about with the zombies not knowing, not doing very good in the dark. I thought it was really cool idea where it was like where the girl just all of a sudden throws like a thing of water on there and starts putting the newspaper up. And
Yes,
supposedly, like, okay, now the zombies can't see you, so now they're not trying to bang down the door. And I'm like, that just seems really like smart, but kind of like that's a
unrealistic.
really effective way to keep. I'm like, man, that's like why would never like even to the point where like the when you get to all the people hidden in the one caboose and they have like they use the was a fire extinguisher and stuff like that to kind of block off, stuff like that. I thought that was just like kind of neat way. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. But then, like I said, you find out where, yeah, if you get in, it works for maybe a caboose that might have 20 or 30 zombies. But when you start getting 80 to 90 zombies in there, eventually, if they know something's in there, even with you before you block it off, it's just going to be enough to push it over and stuff like that. And I like that, like when it gets to towards the end train, and you start
Mhm.
getting towards Busan and stuff like that, where you're seeing these trains overflowing and stuff like that. They're all crashing into each other because they're just overfilled with these zombies to the point where the guy is like, "Oh yeah, man, we're gonna get safe on this one train," and blah 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 blah. That's when the the asshole guy is like trying to make it and he freaking breaks his ankle and the conductor comes to help him. Bad choice, dude. Don't cue to survive a horror film and or virus or zombie film. If you're a good guy and there's a piece of shit and the piece of shit's asking you for your help, don't help him because he's gonna fuck you over eventually where he gets it where he fucks him over. Now he gets freaking killed and stuff like that in it. So I thought it was crazy. I thought that part was nuts, like, to a point where it's like you never know exactly where it's gonna happen. But then like I said, I love the fact that when the train starts going, you got a long ass line of zombie people crawling on each other to the point where they're we talked about it before, with the previous I'm gonna go through a little throwback of a previous episode we just talked about with John Carpenter. We talk about bad CGI surfing in
Yes.
Escape from LA. There was better surfing on the zombie wave than than there was in LA. Apparently South Korea has better surfers than LA does.
Better waves.
Better waves. But yeah, like to the point where it's like, yeah, the whole entire time you're trying to survive and stuff like that, he gets on this freaking train, he does all that stuff like that. Yeah, and like you said, he's fighting off this last, the last zombie, the last bad guy, the piece of shit guy that we don't like and stuff like that. And then, boom. He's fighting them off. He's doing all this stuff like that. He's got him on top of him. He's not biting him. He's doing stuff and stuff like that. And then, what lo and behold, he goes and tries to grab him. And yeah, I'm gonna put my hand right here, where yeah, I'm just in biting range. He gets bit, and you're like, oh man, I feel bad for it's that part too is really it's just heartbreaking too because you can just like I said, I mean you can say what you want with actors and stuff like that, especially kid actors. Man, that little girl was freaking heartbreaking in that scene, man. Like you
Yes.
just feel like the pain of her losing her father and stuff like that. To the point where this it gets to that and stuff like that, and then it goes to goes to question the big question of when you have something that's as big as this movie is and it's got such a huge cult following, it's such a big following, it's making billions of dollars, it's making so much money in a country, it's one of the highest gross ones. Well, yeah, we're gonna keep riding that train and we're gonna make a second one, which they shouldn't have made the second one. It's one of those ones where
Yeah.
like the hype of that first one, and that first one was so good. And not, don't get me wrong, I'm not deploring that people shouldn't check out the second one. it's an okay film, but when you compare it to how great that the first film is,
It's going to give you
it's
sadness.
really really bad. Now, like I said, it's not as we like to as we like to express on the Vampire and Devil podcast millions and millions of times to nauseum that most of the people on the show are like, well, you guys stop fucking talking about it, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. It's not as bad as The Crow to Wicked Prayer,
Yeah.
but it's in that ballpark of maybe the Crow and the Salvation. You know, what I mean,
Salvation.
it's still Train to Busan 2 is okay. It's entertaining at most, maybe, but compared to how good the original one, or like you said, we said how good that first Crow movie is. To go from if you all of a sudden, I don't know what idiot would do it, but let's say you're on a Crow watching day and you don't have two or three, so you decide to watch one and four.
Oh,
You're gonna be like, what the fuck? And that's kind of like how this is. Like I said, maybe not to that epically bad, but you're like, wow, such a great movie. What the hell did they do? And it's one of those ones like I get it. When you have a project or a movie that's blowing up that big, yeah, you kind of have to. And like I said, in this, especially in this genre and the way it ends, it's easy to make a continuation of this. I mean, you got to tell me just because that girl and the other girl get away on this train and go to Busan doesn't necessarily mean that Busan's not going to be taken over by zombies. So I mean, it's got that, you still got the 9 billion horde of people who are on the other side that you're still going to deal with. So it's like understandable. Like 28 days later, it makes sense of why you would make sequels because the world's still alive. That doesn't mean that these zombies or these infected are still going to. So I get the point, that this made a gazillion dollars, but sometimes see you're better off just making one film and blowing it up and then using that money and that wave for that director to make another film instead or do something,
yes.
not a sequel sometimes.
100%. No, and it's just like you were saying, Devil. It's when it comes to using the crow, for me, it's definitely a 1 and 3 because like the second movie, it's not bad. It's just like the third crow. It's not bad, but it does not compete or compare to the others. I will die on the hill, like I've said a million times, for how good City of Angels is. When
Yeah.
you compare it to The Crow, that is not the argument. I'm just talking about what they tried to do, the attempts that they made, and the way that it was written is that I will die on the hill for how quality, I should say, City of Angels is. Now, when it comes to Salvation, again, I enjoy it just fine. It's an enjoyable time, but that's where the decline does come in. When it comes to the story they try to tell, they're taking things kind of off the premise of The Crow and just making mistakes. But that's just the way that it is. And you know what? Again, maybe somewhere down the line, we'll just get completely over it and just hit the Fangs and Infernos with a full on Crow breakdown of all 5 movies where we can just talk about it all. We can destroy what we need to destroy and we can cover it as we see fit. Now, that being said, spoiler alert for any of you Fangs and Infernos that don't know, Devil and I did do an episode about Bill Skarsgård's Crow that you can go and check out. So if you do want to hear a little bit about some Crow before we actually get into a franchise type conversation, there is a little bit of that to wet your whistle. But anyway, Devil, my friend, let's finish off the obituaries there, my good man. Train to Busan, man, how do you look at it?
I mean, to me, yeah. I mean, to me, like I said, it's one of those films where, yeah, you got the hype, everybody's talking about it. You're like, okay, do I believe it or not? And it's one of those ones, like I said before, that it is the hype. I think it is probably one of the better zombie virus type movies to come out within the last 10, 15 years and stuff like that. It's just a good, like I said, not only like is it just a good visual. I mean, yeah, it's got CGI in it. Obviously you're going to have CGI in it when it's not like Night of the Living Dead when you have 10 players in the game. You've got, you have a whole city of these infected coming after you that you're going to have to do some stuff that's going to do CGI. But I love the blend of CGI and practical effects in the film. I love the fact that, like I said, it's a good story arc. You have the asshole father who ends up becoming a character that you kind of don't really care very much for, but by the end of the movie, you're heartbroken that this guy doesn't survive. to the point where yeah, you have that asshole guy who's an asshole in the beginning and he's an asshole at the end, and you loving the fact that he finally gets his demise. So it's one of those ones too where it's like yeah, it's got a little bit of everything. It's got story, it's got zombies, it's got hella freaking crazy graphics. It's bloody as hell. It's gory as hell. It's got a lot of like I said, it's got a lot of cool things I haven't seen before with like I said, the peekaboo zombies in the black and in the tunnels and stuff like that where they can't see it to the point where they're papering the things and stuff like that to get them to not look and stuff like that, like, oh, okay, there's nobody in there, where you're so used to the traditional zombies that once they know you're in there they're going to keep on coming after you or being
Yeah.
able to smell you, where these ones are more like, oh, out of sight kind of out of mind, as long as you're not making a shit ton of noise. They're
Mhm.
kind of like they don't see you and you can't really hear you very much. They're not going to pay you no mind. Where in most ones they're just going to keep. They know you're in there. They're going to keep going after you until you either kill them or they kill you. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think when it goes to that, yeah, I love to give this movie a huge, huge freaking, thing. I like to say that it's like a 9 or a 10 or something like that because I do like this film. There are definitely parts of it that I thought were not as great, but for most of the parts, most of the stuff that or just like little nitpick things, it wasn't really too much, that much. I thought the whole thing from beginning to end, like I said, my main disregard for the or bad thing about this movie is the fact that they made a sequel. But then again, why wouldn't you? If you made a movie that was made a gazillion bazillion dollars, okay, let's try it again. At least as far as right now, they haven't made it. There's no attempt to make a third one, so at least they understand their boundaries and go, okay, you can't fault us for making a second one, really, but you can fault us if we make a third one after a second one drops. So I got to do that. So I gotta go. I gotta go with at least an 8.0 on this. I think this movie was excellent. I think it's worth the hype. I think it's one of those films that if anybody's talking about, especially it's just zombie films within the last 10, 15, years or something like that. Train to Busan's one of those ones that people are talking about constantly. It's a huge movie. Everybody likes it, and it's like I said. It's not only the fact that, like I said, yeah, just because everybody likes it doesn't mean that people aren't gonna hate it. Like the old saying is, if everybody's jumping off the bridge, are you gonna jump off too? And when it comes to this fact, if the movie, if like in this movie is apparent to jumping off a bridge, then I'm gonna jump off the bridge with everybody because like I said, I'm on that gravy train when it comes to enjoying Train to Busan. To the fact that I've watched this movie multiple times, and I'll keep continuing to keep watching this film.
No, absolutely. So we're going to meet in the middle when it comes to this one. So we'll have to extend our discussion a little bit. For me, it's a 7.0 on this one. I do like and agree with your points. I damn sure do. There's something about this movie, as much as I love the design of it and I love the way it's shot and I love the story for it with the idea of a trapped zombie invasion kind of idea. That definitely works for me. I do find it to be in that traditional zombie design though, which I think is the one of reasons why I'm leaning towards a little bit of a more traditional scoring of this. I do enjoy this movie quite a bit. It was really, really cool to get to watch it again because I hadn't seen it in years because the movie's almost 10 years old now. Um, and I really like the design of this movie. So I find it in the middle of a 7.5 between the two of our scores personally. That's kind of how I see it when it comes to that. If that's where we find it to be, this is really where the tricky thing is because I do find that Train to Busan overall has that proper design movie of beginning, middle, and end, where not that the sadness doesn't. I fully find that the sadness has a really good design of beginning, middle, and end. The problem is there's a little lack of character development because of the kills and a little bit of a weaker ending. Not a bad ending, just a little bit lighter of an ending, where I like the idea of the two survivors of Train to Busan getting ready to get fucking smeared out. And if not for the fact that the shooters realize that she's singing, is the reason that their lives ultimately get saved. When it comes to this category, I do like the sadness as an eyelash victory based off the category. But at the same time, Devil, you're not wrong when it comes to the overall presentation of this movie when it comes to Train to Busan.
Okay, so thinking, we're in the third season now, right? We like to do things a little bit differently. I'm gonna pose a question, and we're gonna keep this part in the episode when this airs and stuff like that. But I just now thought of a really cool idea for something to that we can do and continue on doing throughout the seasons and maybe even continuing on into the series. There's a lot of times
Okay.
where your movie gets a 7.0, my movie gets a 7.0, and then we kind of argue on who, not argue, but like debate our facts and stuff like that
Where
of
how to swing the needle.
even though they're 7.0, where the needle is going to swing. I
Okay.
kind of ponder a question where we may leave it when as far as the video goes, we leave it at being even, 7.5. We don't know who the winner is. And then we put it to the Fangs and Infernos on a poll right now. I can just post and have them pick which these two do you think
All right.
should win.
All
And then
right.
that's the one who wins. Even though people might not understand it when they do the poll, we're just going to be like, hey, random question. People eventually might figure it out. But if they don't figure it out, I was just thinking, I was like, that'd be kind of an interesting way, as if we just say, hey, let them decide, because like I said, I just thought about it too, because a lot of times, I'm able to, the devil works his devilish magic and apparently gets his way a lot, where I get to
Which
win a lot of my
vampire
shows.
does know about, but respects the candor.
But yeah, like I said, maybe I'm using a little bit of my devil crossroad magic and stuff like that, and get the wins. And people think that maybe it's not fair that I'm beating the shit out of you all the time in all these showdowns and stuff like that. So I was like, maybe we ponder it with like I said, we won't tell whose movie is what. We just put down which of the and let the Fangs and Infernos battle it out. And then, like I said, I'll do it for a couple days, and then that will be the end of this episode. And then you have to tune in to find out on the obituaries. When we have it at the end of the episode, obviously, all the Fangs and Infernos who have at least watched all of our episodes enough that they can, at the very end, we always have our obituaries and we tell you who wins and stuff like that. Where it's like, ooh, they tell us, when it's tied, who's gonna win right then and there. But now we're gonna kind of give you a little suspense and
Yeah.
make you wait, or at least have to fast forward to the obituary section and check it out yourself.
I think that's a great way to do it, Devil. And I think that we're going to have a lot of fun doing it from this way on. So, this is the way that it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. As of right now, it is an even 7.5 for the virus episode, with Vampires the Sadness and Devils Train to Busan even at a 7.5. Devil will be putting out a poll shortly for you guys to vote on which movie you like and which you think is a better one. And then when it comes to that time, as you guys are familiar with, when we put out the obituaries and also the fatalities, that is when you will find out how it goes. So that is where we are going to sign off for right now. And stay tuned for when Devil chooses to put out the poll. It's not specifically going to be tied into Maniac Mondays. It's going to be at Devil's discretion. When he decides to put out the poll for you guys to vote on, that is where you will get down. He'll run it for as long as he sees fit. And to the victor, go the spoils. And that is the way that we're going to do it from here on out, because sometimes it's that much more important and also that much more fun to not only necessarily go with what Vampire says or with what Devil says, because the fact of the matter is, we have this show. We love doing this show, but your guys' support is what continues to aid us in continuing to do this show. So that's the way it is going to be starting right now with Devil's brain working the way it works, and the fact that Fangs and Infernos and RIPs, you deserve to be as involved as possible. As of right now, we are even at a 7.5 for the Sadness and Train to Busan. We will see who gets the victory. When it comes to all of the people like yourselves involved with us, we really got to take a moment, of course, to give our shout out to our friends, our sponsors, our partners when it comes to the Vampire and Devil podcast. Of course, first and foremost, Mark and Janet, Mark and Lizzie, we love you guys to death. Thank you guys so much. Fangs and Infernos, by supporting us and shopping till you drop when it comes to Vampire and Devil merch, you are also supporting our nearest and dearest at Rock and Horror Apparel. Go to the Vampire and Devil collab category for all of the merch that we offer. And again, make sure that you keep in mind that any deals that Mark and Lizzie run when it comes to rock and horror apply to our merch as well. So keep that in mind whenever they're doing things, whether it be for Black Friday or Christmas or Summerween or Gothmas or however Mark and Lizzie decide to do it. Keep that in mind when it comes to doing some shopping. Of course, our beloved friend Chris, who owns the Buffalo Bill House from Silence of the Lambs. It's an amazing overnight experience. Please check it out. Myself, Devil, Mrs. Vamp, we've all partaken, and it's an amazing good time. It is still pretty chilly out there, and keep in mind, Brutality's got you covered in warming your bones. So much great stuff to choose from. Devil and I are going to be going out soon to see our beloved guy in Wednesday 13 with our beloveds as well. We're super stoked for that. And Brutalities is also partnered with Wednesday 13. A lot of great flavors when it comes to that as well. And then, of course, our guy John, who owns the Salem Witchboard Museum and the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore. Make sure you guys are supporting independent businesses and small-time museums to keep them available for all of us. And when it comes to small-time businesses, our friends Chris and Saren, of course, with Twisted Vines, amazing horror decor, and we love them to death for all of their support. So again, that is the way that it is for right now. We are at a 7.5 equally for the virus episode when it comes to the Sadness and Train to Busan. We will see who wins when it comes to you guys putting in your votes. Take care, be good, and we will see you very, very soon. Horns up. Fangs out.
Devil, my friend, I think it's time that we spill the tea. Brutalities. Vampire and Devil podcast couldn't be more excited, more humbled to let you all know that we have partnered with very dear friends of ours for a long time in Brutalities. And there's so much great stuff, so many flavors, so much to enjoy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about it. Isn't that right there, my friend?
Oh yeah, we like it hot. Of course the Inferno likes it hot. Do you like the hot tea? Well, you might as well get some Brutality. Yeah, horror movies, puns, rock and roll, Brutality's got it all.
Absolutely. When it comes to the vampire, you know that he's going to absolutely gravitate towards that Nosferatu or that Nosferatu brew. Absolutely a favorite of mine. And we got to show a little bit love to, by all means, the biggest franchise in horror right now. That would be Terrifier. So Brutalities has brought you Terrifier. But that's just from the vampire. The devil has some favorites of his own.
Oh yeah, do you like the movie Pumpkinhead? Well, how about a little pumpkin bread for your throat holes? And like I said, with the rock and roll fans and the horror fans, Wednesday 13 fans, do you like Wednesday 13 and tea? How about a couple of those? With the Summertime Suicide and a couple other ones too. So if you like Wednesday 13 and you like the tea and you like the Brutalities, go to the website.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we like to look out for those that look out for us. We love you, Fangs. We love you, Infernos. But as a courtesy from Brutalities to be bestowed on you, we have that Vampire and Devil coupon code, don't we, my friend?
Oh yeah, you want to save a little dough, little cheddar, maybe buy some more shit? Go on the line, Brutalities, type in Vampire and Devil, and you get 10% off your order. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. So it's getting into the chilly weather. People need to warm their bones. They need to warm what little skin they may or may not have. But Brutalities is the way to get it done. So that's the way it's going to be because Vampire and Devil said so. Horns up, fangs out for Brutalities. All right there, Fangs and Infernos. Let's talk about a brand new coffin nail, shall we? And We're actually going to have a discussion about this guy right here, Vampires Out for Blood. It's got Vanessa Angel in it. You guys are going to know her mostly from Kingpin. You know, she was Woody Harrelson's love interest when it came to that movie. She was also in a bunch of other movies, including a fun one that Devil and I discussed on a previous episode called Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys, where we didn't specifically talk about Vanessa's movie, but we referenced it, showed it on camera to have a little bit of fun as we talked specifically about Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys in that showdown. But anyway, back on point. When it comes to this movie, I like it actually just fine. I actually think it's pretty fun. I think the lore is relatively accurate. I like the look of the vampires when it comes to practical effects. You know, they're kind of rigid, rigid foreheads, kind of demonic look with really gnarly fangs. Kind of had that Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV series mixed with like True Blood kind of aspect to it. Really not too shabby. I really don't have too much negative to say about that. When it comes to the movie itself, acting wise, it's okay. It's basic. Some might consider it subpar. I think it was okay enough. I like the overall story. I like the concept of like this police officer who's drinking his career away because he's gotten his divorce from Vanessa's character and he thinks that she's become like this new hot shit actress and she's sleeping with half of Hollywood, which isn't really the case. That's just how he sees it with his drinking, his demons and all of that. The captain of the police force, his boss, is pissed as hell at him, who's played by Lance Hendrickson. So that's super duper awesome. You know, a little near dark vampire and horror icon legend when it comes to that. And then he's also discovering that there's vampires running around. He gets turned. He's trying to slow down the turning process. Vanessa starts realizing that what's going on is actually going on, and she's trying to help him out with the turning process and stop him from becoming one of them. And then ultimately, I think it's a good twist at the end. I think the movie's solid. Again, it's not going to get exemplary marks. In fact, actually, if you look up this movie, people have been pretty detrimental to it. But look, I like it just fine. It is what it is. I think it's an enjoyable time. It's not overly long, and I think it's worth just giving it a shot if you just kind of want to laugh and not take something overly seriously. So I'm going to give it a solid enough mark, nothing over the top, but I am going to give it a 5.5 on this Coffin Nails for Vampires Out for Blood. Ghouls and Fangs, Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a three-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe, we've got John Waters, but what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history, he's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that, they were going to bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans or maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you gotta check it out, because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities Shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum. We're off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, fangs out.